This call is being recorded.
Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is now open for public attendance in person. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you have submitted a comment request, the Chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The Chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak, as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the Chair as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Good morning, Reeve-Link. Brian from Administration. We do have some items requested to be added to the agenda today. The first one would be Township Road 232 speed limits.
We can just put these under 2.2. Is that unfinished business or business arising?
Yep, we can put them under 2.2. The second one that I have for request would be the Drumheller Area Health Foundation member at large appointment. One that we can also add or request to add is the letter, a letter from the village of Hazar for proposed bylaw services. And number 4, and the final one that I would have is the Strathmore Seed Cleaning Plant loan. It's a request from the board to defer payments. Thank you.
I just have a couple of others. RMA resolution, the one that we had proposed to take forward to the district meeting. I just have a request back from the district regarding that resolution. So I think because we had a 2.21, I think we're on 6 now, or that was 6. And then 7, if we could discuss attendance at Siksika functional exercise. And 8, Rocky View extended an invitation to a grand opening of, Langdon Emergency Services Building. And last that I have, let me just make sure, is ratify attendance at the golf tournament with Alberta Transportation. Any other additions or changes? If not, a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll move the agendas.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We had the minutes from our regular council meeting of July 6th.
I'll move the minutes.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Minutes from the public hearing, July 6th.
I'll move those minutes.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And lastly, minutes from the special council meeting, August 17th.
I'll move them.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 2.11. I move that the process for the Wheatland County Council meeting, as it pertains to the scheduled public hearings, will be as follows. Public hearing, first reading if required, then consideration for further readings of the bylaw for those public hearings that have been closed. I further move that the above process will take place with the absence of resolutions to go into and out of council before and after each public hearing. All in favour? Motion is carried. I'll call the public hearing to order for Bylaw 2021-14. Welcome, everybody. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the Municipal Government Act?
Through the chair, yes, it has.
Thank you. And are there any written submissions?
Through the chair, yes, there are two on page 67 and 69 of the agenda. Also, I have one of the respondents meant to be here today but wasn't able to, so he emailed an addition to his comments. If you'd like to see those, I have some copies for you.
Yeah, if we could have those circulated, and would council like those read into the record, or I guess we can look at them first and see what they include. Would council like the correspondence read into the record?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind reading it, that would be great. Thank you.
Through the chair, no problem. So this is in addition to Mr. Nick Allenby's submission. So he states, further to my last correspondence, I apologize in advance, I've been called away on business, not be able to attend tomorrow's meeting. That being said, I happen to be in Pincher Creek on the weekend. Most of the windmills were not turning on Saturday. On Sunday, most of them appeared to be operational. The problem I have with the wind farms, as I've said below, is that these monstrosities are subsidized to make them affordable. The raw materials and energy required to manufacture them makes no logical sense. A solar project makes more sense. It's less raw materials, less energy to manufacture, less waste recycling, and much less of an eyesore. When I say, quote, recycling, end quote, that is a bit of a joke. The wind turbine blades cannot be recycled. They're thrown into a giant hole in the ground and left for thousands of years. This is not good stewardship of the planet. I also explored thorium reactors below. In my opinion, this should be seriously considered. Best regards.
Thank you. Please proceed.
All right, thank you. Stefan Kuntz presenting Bylaw 2021-14 on behalf of administration. So council may recall this item from the July 6th council meeting when this was received first reading. The purpose of the application is to redesignate portions of 19 quarter sections totaling approximately 471 acres from agriculture general to energy district in order to allow for a wind energy conversion system known as the Wheatland Wind Project. The lands are located approximately 20 to 30 kilometers southeast of the town of Drumheller and encompass an area approximately 11,000 acres in size. So the project includes 24 turbines, a substation, operations and maintenance facility, and associated utility infrastructure, including underground collection lines and internal service roads. The application received Alberta Utilities approval in September of 2018. A number of technical studies were provided to the AUC at that time. These include a renewable energy referral report, environmental effects assessment, environmental protection plan, and a noise impact assessment. The AUC had no concerns with those reports. Additionally, the applicant provided a traffic impact assessment in support of this application. This was reviewed by our engineer consultant, and there were no concerns with the assessment. Now, obviously knowing, I brought this up at the first reading, but I wanted to mention it again as well. knowing the next item in next council meeting in September, administration is proposing to actually remove the energy district. So the applicant was aware that that was on the horizon when they made the application. Through discussions with administration, was decided to proceed as is. So the reason for that, obviously, it's council's decision. It hasn't been made yet. So we knew that was on the horizon, but until that's actually made, they can't exactly proceed based on that. So they decided to go ahead, in case it didn't get approved, then at least they have the correct land use district to proceed. The other reason was that they could at least keep the application moving forward. So the information that we gathered through through the notification and circulation process, they used that information to improve their development permit application, which should streamline the development permit process. So a development permit is required. So if this is approved today by council, they may proceed with that. That application will confirm the details regarding site access, excuse me, operational manners, and any required variances. So in terms of the alignment with the strategic plan and county policy, the proposal aligns with statutory policies. And in general, applications like this tend to be in the public interest. Contributing to the electrical grid in a sustainable, environmentally responsible manner is a positive. It increases energy availability to all the province, and locally there'll be tax revenue and job creation benefits seen to Wheatland County as well. So that concludes my presentation. Administration is recommending option 1 approval, bylaw 2021-14, and I'm happy to take any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Any questions? Does the applicant wish to speak? If you can just come to the microphone, and if you can just state your name, please. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chair, Council, Administration. My name is Keaton Lever, and I'm presenting here on behalf of the Wheatland Wind Project. I'm excited to be here this morning. It's actually my first public meeting since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, so looking forward to meeting you all face-to-face here. I'd like to just give a real quick Wheatland Wind Project update on the status of the facility, where the facility stands. I know we're kind of proceeding through on the redesignation and the county development permit, so I thought it was a good opportunity to provide you guys an update on the facility. The project sponsors are remaining the same. It is a 75% owned by Potentia Renewables. I am the senior manager for project development for Potentia Renewables. Potentia is a subsidiary of Power Corporation of Canada. It's one of the 10th largest companies in Canada. They got their start in their business in the insurance industry, so Great West Life, Canada Life is part of the Power Corporation of Canada. We're a fully integrated developer, owner, and operator of renewable energy, which means we take all of our facilities directly from development all the way through operation, and we own and operate them long term, and then are responsible for the decommissioning of the facility at end of life. We're currently building out 538 megawatts of projects in Alberta. There's 5 of them total that are part of this portfolio that we are developing. All of those will be in operation by the end of 2023, and it represents roughly an $800 million investment in the Alberta economy. We have a 25% local partner called Greengate Power Corporation. They were established about 15 years ago. They're a privately owned Alberta-based developer of renewable energy. They've developed more than 1 gigawatt of operating and in-construction projects. Some of these projects incorporate the 465 megawatt solar facility going into Vulcan County. They're also responsible for the Halkirk project, the 150 megawatt facility in Paintearth County as well. All of these facilities together represent around a $1.6 billion investment in the Alberta economy. Just a quick update on our facility. We have signed a turbine supply agreement for 24 Siemens Gamesa renewable energy, 5.0145. So this means that our project nameplate capacity is about 120 megawatts. We'll deliver that to the grid. Each turbine is sized at 5 megawatts with an opportunity to uprate to 5.2. So there are certain turbines that operate at a 5.2 and some that operate at a 5.0, depending on the wind variance throughout the project. The rotor diameter is 145 meters, which means each blade is about 72 meters in length, with a hub height of 95 meters. To kind of bring it back to the existing project, if any of you have had the opportunity to see it, the turbines are about 15 meters taller than those. However, the rotor is about give or take about 50 to 60 meters larger. So the rotor is considerably larger. However, the turbine itself stands very similar in stature. This allows us to capture more wind or be able to generate more power at lower wind speeds. We expect our first turbine to arrive on site roughly June 1st, 2022. The project has received its Alberta Utilities Commission power plant approval on September 7th, 2019. We did submit an LOE, and LOE allows us to make minor adjustments to our project layout, our project infrastructure. We received approval for that on June 15th, and this encompassed the minor changes, including the change in turbine technology to Siemens Gamesa. We have also signed an EPC contract with an Alberta-owned company called Skyflow Consulting. I'll quickly touch base on them a little further in the slide deck. And then we have submitted our county development application with yourselves, your county, the Wheatland County, on July 26, 2021. Just pause here if anyone has any questions today.
Thank you.
This is the Wheatland project layout that we currently have. This is the final layout we are proceeding with. It shows the 24 turbines, the associated infrastructure, including the underground collector and access road, as well as our AUC-approved substation location, our temporary laydown, and where our O&M building will be for the 25-year service period. There's some project benefits that are associated with the Wheatland Wind project we're excited to deliver. It's the creation of 200 jobs during the construction stage. This will range from skilled labor such as crane operators, electricians, iron workers, things of that nature, as well as laborers, support staff, things along that as well. During operation, there'll be 5 to 15 full-time jobs. We'll have our own site manager on site. We're hoping to bring on somebody local. Siemens Gamesa will also have roughly around 10 technicians looking after the 24 turbines, all hoping to be housed locally as well. We have set up a community development fund which will contribute $25,000 per year during operation. This reflects roughly a $625,000 investment to the local community. We're looking right now for support on how to deploy that through Wheatland County, as well as through the local organizations there. We have contract opportunities for local businesses for pressure washing, snow removal, mowing, things along that side as well. We have increased spending on goods and services. We expect our folks to be staying in hotels locally, shopping at local grocery stores, things of that nature. And then we have we're excited to announce also our increased tax revenue, which is approximately $20 million over the project life. So we're expecting obviously that the project will be in operation for 25 to 30 years, so roughly around that $20 million mark of tax revenue. And we'll provide additional revenue streams for our participating landowners via our lease payments and royalty payments as well. Our project constructor, the Wheatland Wind project, has signed an EPC contract with Skyflow Consulting, which was incorporated in 2010, and they have brought together the extensive experience of 3 local businesses. The 3 local businesses is Wind Construction Services. They're responsible for project management, turbine install, oversight of the project. They have 13 years experience in the renewable energy industry, and they've built more than 385 megawatts of operating wind farms, which represent more than 300 turbines currently. They've also managed more than $680 million in capital spending in renewable projects. The second partner in Skyflow is the Rising Edge Group. They're responsible for our electrical design, engineering, and construction of the electrical systems, including the substation. They have 25 years experience in this industry, in the electrical industry, and they've built more than 6 wind farms here in Alberta, and they currently employ more than 200 people across Alberta. Wilms Construction is responsible for our civil design, our engineering and construction when it comes down to any civil infrastructure. They have 30 years experience in the civil industry and have built more than 420 turbine foundations. Right here I have a quick update on the project schedule. We're anticipating to start construction this year and be operational by the end of next year. This year, mid-October or so, we plan to start civil construction, start clearing land. It's important for us to have the opportunity to do that this fall as the harvest is complete. I'm sure we're all aware it has been an extremely dry year. We take all of Alberta Environment and Parks recommendations for soil management plans, which means we separate the 2 levels of soil, A level on one side, B level on the other. This is easier to do in dry conditions than it is in the spring when things are wet, and we have landowners in the field seeding as well. So we're really hoping to be able to reduce the impact to local stakeholders by starting construction this fall. Just a quick overview of the timeline here. In Q1, Q2, we did execute on our turbine supply agreement and we had selected our EPC as planned. Q2, we did submit our AUC amendments and received approval on those. Currently, we're sitting at Q3 at sort of a pinnacle point of where our project is at in the schedule. We have submitted our development permit applications and we're completing our final engineering. Q4, we do plan to start that civil construction, get that sort of arranged between October 15th and November 15th. We will break for the winter. As you guys are aware, it gets quite windy here. It's not ideal for construction, so we can be prepared to receive turbine components in June of next year. So Q2, Q3, we'll start turbine delivery. We'll erect the turbines as well as electrical works for full operations by the end of 2022. Just a couple next steps the project has committed to. In light of Potentia's commitment to open, transparent development, we have selected an independent community liaison committee. The CLC's purpose is to discuss the construction, maintenance, and decommissioning of the project. It's an ongoing opportunity for two-way communication and information sharing between ourselves and the community. We have selected an independent facilitator for this, AECOM, who will facilitate the CLC and chair the CLC. It will consist of 3 to 8 community members. The AECOM is accepting applications right now from community members to sit on this board, or the committee, I should say. And we're hoping that those will be members that are close to the project, both in support and opposed, so we get a good variety of folks that are interested in helping make decisions for the project. We have also extended interest to the Wheatland County as well, if you guys are interested in participating on that. We also have Skyflow setting up a current job fair, so they're hosting a job fair and a vendor opportunity, so it's an evening of networking on September 8th, so they'll be looking for local talent and resource to support the construction of the wind farm. We will also supply myself as well as a construction manager to answer any questions that stakeholders may have during this evening. Any questions?
Just one, maybe not relevant for my own information for sure. You said the farmers would get a local royalty for the, is it site specific where the actual site where the windmill is situated, or is it a blended thing for the whole area?
So our lease agreement works maybe slightly different than other renewable energy lease agreements. So anyone who has signed an option to lease contract with our facility receives a payment. That payment is dependent on the amount of land that's invested into the project, as well as if the project has a turbine. So essentially we have a royalty. It's a percentage of the gross revenue the project generates, and that's divided into 50%. So 50% goes to those who have turbines and 50% goes to those who have land. So anyone who elected to sign land with the project receives a payment. Currently, I believe we have around 30,000 acres of land signed, and only around 8,000 to 9,000 do we actually use. So the rest of those landowners still continue to receive a payment, although they're not within the project boundary and do not have infrastructure on their land. And then those who have turbines receive an uptick of a second pool for housing a turbine.
Okay, thanks.
Just a comment that I have not received anything in that area negative from the landowners in that area. I've received positive comments and comments to the effect of when are they going to start putting these things in. Because I think they've been sitting on the option now for 5 or 6 years, something like that. So that's the only comments I'm getting out of the area, is that they're kind of wondering when it's going to happen. So.
Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Chair, Council, Administration, thank you for your time.
Are there any persons in support of the application who would like to speak? Are there any persons with concerns or opposed to the application who would like to speak? Any final comments from the applicant? Any final comments from staff?
Through the chair, no.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for attending the hearing. We will adjourn the public hearing for Bylaw 2021-14. Council's wishes for further readings.
I'll move second reading for Bylaw 2021-14.
Councillor Kester has moved second reading. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move third reading.
Councillor Armstrong has moved third reading. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Call the public hearing to order for Bylaw 2021-19. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Through the chair, yes, we can.
And were there any written submissions?
Through the chair, no, there were not.
Thank you.
Good morning again. Stephen Kuntz presenting Bylaw 2021-19. This application proposes to repeal the Nelson Area Structure Plan. So this is something of a bookkeeping item. The lands are located immediately east of the town of Strathmore. When this area structure plan was originally adopted, it was under previous statutory policy. At the time, an ASP was required if an applicant was proposing more than 3 lots on a quarter section. They were proposing originally 5 lots on the quarter section. That was in 2013. This was then later amended to go back down to 3 lots. So current policy now under the municipal development municipal development plan allows for the 5 lots. So this area structure plan actually doesn't give them the same level of development potential that they would have under the municipal development plan. So administration determined this area structure plan is obsolete, and repealing it will allow the same development rights as anyone else would in the area. So that concludes my presentation. Be happy to take any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Any questions? Does the applicant or any person, well, yes, not really relevant to us, any persons in support of the application who would like to speak? Any persons with concerns or who are opposed to the application who would like to speak? Any final comments from administration?
Through the chair, no.
We will adjourn the public hearing for Bylaw 2021-19. Council's wishes for further readings.
I'll move that council I'll move second reading of Bylaw 2021-19.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move third and final reading at 2021-19.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved third reading. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll open the public hearing for Bylaw 2021-16. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Yes, we can.
And are there any written submissions?
Through the chair, there are not.
Thank you.
Bryce Mackin presenting for Bylaw 2021-16, road closure public hearing. A road closure done in 1989 by the provincial government of undeveloped road allowance lying between Southeast 29 and Southwest 2822-23-4 missed a small triangular area which remains intact. A review of the plans and discussions with land titles indicates the intent was a full closure of the road plan. However, the small area was missed on the plans and descriptions prepared and registered at that time. First reading of this was completed on June 1st. The circulation and of the notice of the public hearing was completed in accordance with the requirements. A road closure bylaw requires first reading followed by a public hearing to be held at a later date. then submission to the Alberta Transportation for ministerial approval, and after ministerial approval, second and third readings will be brought forward. That is my presentation. Any questions?
Any questions? There's no questions. I'll ask if there's any persons in support of the application who would like to speak. Any persons with concerns or opposed to the application who would like to speak? Any final comments from administration?
Through the chair, no comments.
Perfect. Thank you. We will adjourn the public hearing for Bylaw 2021-16. Move to 2.14. Further readings for Bylaw 2021-03.
Thank you. Bryce Mackin again, presenting Bylaw 2021-03. We are recommending Council approve second and third readings of this bylaw. On March 23rd, 2021, Council approved first reading of the bylaw to close a portion of undeveloped original road allowance lying between Northeast 7 and Southeast 1827-21. Public hearing was held May 4th, 2021, and the bylaw has now received approval by the Minister of Transportation. It now requires second and third reading. The proposed area of closure is subject of an encroachment agreement approved by Council in 2018 for the portion of undeveloped municipal road allowance that contains a portion of the access road to the golf course and campground development in Rosebud. The proposed closure and land exchange will not leave any titled parcels landlocked. The proposed area of closure is approximately 0.81 acres. The applicable $1,000 fee required under Policy 9.5.4 has been paid, and the applicant will be responsible for all costs, including survey plans and land titles registration. A road closure bylaw requires first reading followed by the public hearing, then submission to Alberta Transportation, and once approved, second and third readings are held at a later date, which is where we are now. Available for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move second reading.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
I'll move third and final reading.
Councillor Kester has moved third reading. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.21, Letter to Minister of Agriculture and Forestry regarding Wheatland County declaring a municipal agricultural disaster due to drought. Good morning.
Good morning. The response letter from the Minister of Ag, I believe, is in your package to our declaration of an ag disaster. So I don't know if anybody's read through it or has any question on it. At last count, I believe there was over 30 municipalities that had declared a disaster. So,
any questions regarding the letter or the response from the minister?
I'll move we accept his information.
Councillor Kester's moved to accept his information. And just on behalf of council, thank you to you, Russ, and to your department for the work that you've been doing on this. I know I've spoken to some egg producers that really appreciate that the county had been monitoring and did do this declaration. And it's just such a challenging year for our egg producers. And I think it is helpful for them knowing that we are advocating to the province, and I think that we will need to continue to advocate for further measures, because certainly what I'm hearing, especially from some of our ranchers, is what's currently being done isn't enough. And so I think we're going to have to continue that advocacy both to the provincial government and the federal government. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.22, Township Road 232. I did circulate several pieces of correspondence from ratepayers in Division 2 regarding Township Road 232. The main concerns that have been expressed are around increased traffic, particularly commercial traffic, as well as some concerns around speed. There are also ratepayers along the road who support the current speed as it is set and would like council to consider leaving it at the current speed. This initially arose, Councillor Wilson had received some comments from some egg producers who he had seen, who had noticed impacts to agricultural operations on 232 due to both the traffic and the speed. And so at the time he had said he had changed his position and would support a slower speed. At that point I had not received any concerns from my ratepayers, but now obviously I have. So I'm bringing this forward. I guess I've circulated the correspondence. I have one more that I received late last night that I'll circulate to council shortly. My request would be just for administration to review the concerns and just perhaps make a recommendation around process to bring information back to council.
Sure. And just to supplement Reeve Link's comments, just a couple of actions that we've undertaken as a result of just some of the concerns raised. Ultimately, internally as staff, our peace officers have created targeted patrols just to file and document efforts specifically in this area. We have long-standing targeted patrol areas in and around this area, but this one can remain. So as well, we have reached out to businesses in the areas just to remind them of the speed reduced zones along 232. This is typically what we do in terms of our peace officers and the public relations campaigns. Should we receive any comments, just as a friendly reminder, heavy logistics companies and the rest in and around this area. Traffic counters, which we do have the technology for, we have set them up and we're compiling data and information to monitor and record the volume of speed and traffic. So as a result of typically these reports for speed reductions are council directed, and our peace officers in conjunction with heavy kind of consultation with GM of Transportation's group produces a report, data driven with a recommendation. So there are a couple things that we have done internally in order to kind of monitor and document and move forward with a potential recommendation should that be council's decision. Thank you.
Thank you. And I
question through the chair, when the staff brings whatever they bring back, recommendation or whatever they bring back, is there going to be I guess I'd like to see what the engineers report as to what that road was built to, what standard it was built to, and there's a reason why they build them to a certain standard, and if it's capable of carrying that weight, then that's not the issue. The only issue is the amount of traffic that's on the road and whether or not we should be changing the speed limit simply because of that. So.
Madam Reeve and Council, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I read through some of the correspondence, and I'd like to see the LCV vehicles, which is the double trailers. My understanding was that they're only supposed to be on 4-lane highways, and I've seen a number of them go on these roads. And that's not our jurisdiction. I realize it's provincial, but has that changed? Because if it has, we need to be aware of that from the province. Because those vehicles it was a trial process, I believe, about 10 years ago. They were supposed to not go on windy days. They were only supposed to go on 4-lane roads, and I've noticed that none of that's being enforced anymore and looked after. And I don't want to see two 53-foot trailers going down that road. That's not what it's built for. That's what this 4-lane highway is for. Some of this stuff with commercial vehicles, in my opinion, if someone's traveling down that road with a commercial vehicle, the difficulty of getting there with all the turns and stops and starts, there's a reason that guy's on that road and he should be stopped. Because in all likelihood, he's doing something he shouldn't be doing. That's just my opinion. Thanks.
Yeah, further to Ben's comments, when you make a report of what the road was built to, I like to have the current condition of the road, see if it's suffering any undue effects.
Excellent discussion, thank you. I'll put a motion on the floor that, I would leave it to administration's discretion when they would be able to prepare it.
So through the Reeve, I would anticipate just it's an interdivisional collaboration effort here. Probably the last meeting is September at the earliest.
That'd be great.
So we are going to be informing the ratepayers, like I won't get a surprise phone call in the middle of, like yesterday morning going, I have no idea what's going on here. I had no idea this was happening. These ratepayers are very concerned about what is our perceived, like we just seem to be doing stuff that doesn't have public consultation in it, and I'm very concerned about the direction this is going.
So through the Reeve to Councillor Eichert, absolutely. So in these reports for any speed recommendations, changes, and just studies, we do consult, and obviously right now with the significant input that's been coming through, it's basically already started. So we'll gather feedback and information through this.
If council was supportive, I had considered just doing like a division meeting, just to open it up to ratepayers to provide information just about the process. It could be super brief, just letting them know that you're going to be bringing information back. And then I thought probably the easiest way to approach it would be just to have impacted landowners submit letters, just because that's what we already have from several. So I don't know if administration has recommendations on best practice around that, like the best way to get fair engagement from everybody.
Absolutely. So we do implement any best practices. So we'll take the direction back, should this be the direction of council, and we'll await that direction, and then implement the best kind of outreach program that we can, specific to impacted ratepayers, residents, business owners, and the rest. So we'll definitely, that's a priority for any potential change that may come forth. It may change. There may be a recommendation to reduce, but we have to take all the reports, the engineering studies, and the rest into consideration.
Yeah, that's very helpful. For me, the main thing that I let the ratepayers know when I was discussing with them is we definitely want it to be obviously informed consideration, exactly as Councillor Armstrong and Kester raised, just based on the design that the road was built to and the specs for that, and then just balancing the safety concerns with the efficient use of our transportation infrastructure. So we'll definitely need to strike a balance between those kind of competing factors. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
My concern with this here, what you're suggesting, is was this done when it was originally built? The community was involved in all this about what the road was going to be, the standard it was going to be built to. So that's already been done. And so why would we do that again? Where it's just strictly, are we going to be changing the speed limit if 20 people get together and say they want it changed on all our roads? Because we just have it's built to a standard. They were aware of the standard. It can carry the load. That's a concern I have. Are we doing this every couple of years?
So my recollection with this road is that, and I won't have this timeline down perfectly, but when it was constructed, the speed limit, so there were distinct speed limits for different sections of the road prior to the completion of the paving all the way to Highway 1. When the paving was completed all the way to Highway 1, I believe the speed limit was set at 90 initially by council, maybe in about, it was prior to this current council sitting, I believe. And that was based on an engineering report from 2015, based on the design and build of the road. One of the issues with the road is some vertical curves or hills on certain sections of the road where the road does meet higher speed limits under one qualification system, but not under Alberta Transportation's. And that would be something I would look to administration to review and analyze and recommend, because it's certainly not our area of expertise. There's different considerations around like that 85th percentile of speed that decision makers can consider when setting a speed limit. But typically, safety has to also be a consideration in balance with that efficient use of our transportation grid. And I think if there's ever, in my own personal opinion, if there's ever safety concerns that are brought to council's attention regarding regarding one of our roads, that we should at the very least review those concerns and get advice from our administrative team in terms of a response. It has been, and there were obviously council considerations in between sort of that timeline I just laid out. I believe it was I'd have to double check my dates, 2018 or 2019. Council, at a councillor request outside of the division, increased the speed across the entire road to 100 kilometers an hour. At the time, I didn't support that because of some of the information in the engineering report. Subsequent to that, we did receive letters from a number of ratepayers drawing to our attention some perceived safety concerns as well, or some experienced safety concerns, particularly around bus drivers, but also from agricultural producers and residents. At that time, council did, I'm not sure what number we're at, but again, amended the speed limit to set a lower speed limit for one small section of the road, I can't remember which range roads, on either side of Range Road 243, in response to those safety concerns. I think that's the history of it.
Well, through the chair, my only concern with it is that it is a public road. We build these roads for the public to access, and as long as when we look at the information, we make the decision based on the traffic that can use the road, not the amount of traffic that can use the road. We aren't here to discriminate against certain vehicles. If they're capable of using that road, then they should be able to use it depending on the structure of the road and the safety issues. So I'm hoping that comes through in your report.
So I do not know the rationale of previous councils that they decided to pave 232. I don't know what that is. But I know that 45 years ago, I drove down that road. It was a washboardy gravel road, and the speed limit on that road is 80 kilometers an hour. So it doesn't seem to make any sense. Why do we spend money on infrastructure and upgrading? We spent, I don't know, upwards probably $15 million upgrading that road, and we haven't increased the speed limit on it? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So we have to sit down there as council, and I think maybe this has to be addressed, is why and where do we put in infrastructure, and why do we do that? I mean, this is no different than any other paved road that we have in the area, that if you get that infrastructure, there are going to be consequences to that infrastructure. I am unaware of any massive safety things that have happened in that thing. I just think this is way too hasty, the decision. I have driven that road multiple times, and that road is safe to drive at 100 kilometers an hour in a modern vehicle. I mean, 40 years ago, 80 was fine on a gravel road on a truck that had worm-geared steering, bias-ply tires, and drum brakes. You know, so like, we can't make the world safe for everybody. And I want this brought up in this new discussion that we're going to have here, because we can't be having a bunch of people out there in the interworld. This social media crap is going to kill us, because we're going to sit down there and, just because I can get 20 people up there in arms that, oh, it's too fast. Like, I have no idea whether it's too fast or not. All I know is that the speed limit on a gravel road is 80 kilometers an hour. Somebody smarter than me set that speed, and we spend millions of dollars on a road, and it's going to be 80 kilometers an hour. It's foolishness.
Recognize there's diverse perspectives around setting speed limits. Just one quick comment, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Kester. There's also a lot of data around setting speed limits. I've reviewed a few reports. I just pulled it up because I was reading it last night. There's a 441-page special report on managing speed, review of current practice for setting and enforcing speed limits. There's a number of considerations that decision makers should be attending to. Certainly people's perceived safety of a road does impact the road that the speed that they travel at on a road, and that is one of the considerations. It plays into that 85th percentile of speed that people just typically travel on the speed, but that is just one consideration. And there is some rationale and some argument against basing decisions on speed around that, or anecdotal perception of what is an appropriate speed for a road. I think it is important in terms of governance for Wheatland County that we look at what best practices are for setting speed limits and utilize those in considering these decisions. And I totally agree with you about social media, but I think we've always had, whether it's, the coffee shop or whatever, where people share concerns and share issues at a local level. And I think it's important that there be a mechanism for people to bring that to council, and that we take those seriously in a balanced approach and see what we can do to mitigate the issues that the ratepayers are bringing to our attention. Councillor Kester.
Yeah, when we built that road, it was lengthy, lots of engineering on it. But we build all our roads to take the weight. We don't build any substandard road in the county. Everyone's built to take, and we did that after serious consultation too. There used to be, but not anymore. There's one standard, takes the weight. I heard in some of these letters that they're concerned about the traffic and the weight on it and the condition of the road. Is it taking it? We built the road. There's two things that destroy the road: weight and traffic. So is the road changing? If we can assure the ratepayers the road is not changing, or if it is, we can take actions to remedy it. That's all I heard in the report. And that's why I said I want current conditions of the road. Has it changed? Is it capable of withstanding the weight? I think that message is important for our ratepayers to know that we build to a standard, and I'm quite proud of all the work we've done on building these roads, and nobody complained when we wanted to build the road. But when you build a road like that, it's going to attract traffic, and it takes traffic off of the side roads that aren't built in previous years, that weren't able to accommodate the weight. That was why we chose strategically some of these roads to build. And yeah, that's the way it is. Thanks.
And I think too, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe that there were some considerations with cost with that road because of the vertical curvature on the road. And so I think that it would have needed more flattening on some of the hills to bring the entire road up to a certain speed. And it was from what I recall from our previous conversations, is that obviously would have had financial impact during the construction of the road to bring, like when you look at Hammer Hill, obviously it's a huge hill. And so that would have been a consideration of the council of the day when they were determining what design and standard to build the road to as well. And that does impact future speed limits. So costs were likely mitigated historically because some of those hills weren't totally, like the vertical curves weren't totally mitigated during construction.
Keeping in mind, through the chair, keeping in mind that in the past, council, specifically on Highway 564, those same issues came up. And there were two roads on that, two hills, major hills, one with a resident on it, and one just because it was a high hill, where council made the conscious decision to lower the standard just a bit to save money, because it would have, on the one hill, it would have meant lowering that hill 3 more meters, which would have been huge dollars, and still sign it at 100 kilometers an hour rather than having multiple signages on that road. And the other one at the residence was exactly the same. So in the past, we've done it simply because it made sense. And like Tom says, I've driven down that road too, and it's quite, at 100, there's no big deal. At 90, there's no big deal. 80, part of the reason they didn't like it at 80 because it was gravel. That was one of the reasons they wanted pavement on there, was so they could do more than 80 kilometers an hour. So very mindful of that when you're making your decision.
And Ben, too, the province took that road over 20 years ago, and it's still at the same speed limit. They didn't change it at all.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And you're talking about Hammer Hill there. The concern wasn't the height of the hill. For it wasn't me, it was the approach of a gravel road coming to it. That was the safety concern, getting that approach down so it was not sloping down into the road. That was the concern, not so much the height of the hill, but the approach. And the approach, if you drive that approach, it is flat. And we put a curve in it and everything else and made it the way it is. But that was the biggest concern, was the approach of the gravel road. I can't think of it. Must be like a 233 or something. I'll wait for the staff to make a presentation.
Just for council's information as well, in a couple of the conversations, I'll keep council up to date on all correspondence, but a couple of the conversations with 2 of the ratepayers that had concerns about lowering the speed limit, they were very open to having a conversation around a compromise of perhaps considering 90 kilometers an hour or something like that. Personally, I would not support an 80 kilometer an hour speed limit. Certainly not called for from any of the information that I've looked at, but consideration perhaps of a compromise may be something that council could consider once we have all of the information to review. I'll put a motion on the floor that council direct administration to bring back a report with recommendations regarding speed and traffic on Township Road 232. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to the Drumheller Health Foundation, I believe, appointment. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. We did have a request from Tricia Saywall from the Drumheller Area Health Foundation just to appoint an additional member at large. It is a non-compensated board from the county. It's something that's kind of ran up in Drumheller. Ben did attend their AGM, I believe, last month. And they are coming here to present on September 21st at the second council meeting in September. I really don't have too much else to report from this one. They did request a letter from the county just appointing Mary Marshman as the additional member at large. And we thought just the best way to do it is have the council resolution behind it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Just for further on that, Gary Grabson was appointed, I don't know how many years ago. And
For me.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and he sat there for years. He's since moved into the town of Drumheller. He still owns land in the county, I think. But we had no representative from the county sitting on that board, and they actually do represent a good number of our ratepayers in that area. So they put the question to me at the last meeting. They said that Mary Marshman does a lot of work for the foundation, so I said, well, I'll take it to council and see if council would agree to have Mary sit as our representative on the Drumheller Health Foundation, and she has since said she would. The only other one, that, as our county representative, and Gary said he would sit as our member at large if we were still willing to have him there. But if council would rather have somebody from the area, that's up to them. But Gary said he would still represent as a second member on that board. So yeah, I'll put a motion on the floor to appoint Mary Marshman as our council representative to the Drumheller Health Foundation, and that Gary stay on as a member at large. There's no financial cost to the municipality. It's just representation for our...
Any questions or discussion regarding the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Please convey our thanks on behalf of council for representing us there.
I'll ask Glenn to make those representations. It's his sister. He can tell her. You'll see her before I will.
We'll move to 2.24. We had a request from the Village of Hizar circulated indicating that Hizar Village Council would like to request that Wheatland County consider providing animal control services in the Village of Hizar as per the draft agreement, and ask if we would consider providing other bylaw services such as traffic and noise control. So we could consider a motion directing administration to bring back a report on possibilities and arrangements for providing bylaw services to the Village of Hizar, if council is open to that. I believe we do currently provide in the Village of Rocky Ford.
So they're asking for all their bylaw, not just dog control? Because they were currently through Newell, were they not?
Yep.
So just a couple of follow-ups here. So I received the formal correspondence. The council just recently discussed it at the village, just with respect to bylaw services, animal control, all of those services. So what we can do is obviously my intention, should council direct us to, is meet with the CAO of Hizar and start discussing kind of arrangements in that matter. What we'll do as well is we'll look at our current existing complement, any time in addition that could be spent, and an arrangement in which we could figure out a cost arrangement or something like this and bring back a fulsome report with that respect. But of course, prioritizing engaging with the CAO of Hizar to move forward in this at, obviously their council directed this, and we'll wait for direction from council.
I would move that staff keep communicating with the town of Hizar and bring back a proposal for bylaw enforcement within the Village of Hizar.
Councillor Armstrong has a motion on the floor. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.25. I did circulate a letter via email. Let me know if you need a few minutes to read it. I just did it this morning. My apologies. A request from the Strathmore Seed Cleaning Plant Board. The letter states that reports indicate that Western Canada is currently experiencing a drought seriously affecting the agriculture industry. Consequently, the seed plant will also suffer the repercussions of this misfortune. As a direct result, grain producers will have extremely lower yields this harvest, and seed suppliers will have reduced inventory. Strathmore Seed does expect the same issue of limited production. The possible volume reduction will impact revenue and cash flow for the fiscal year. Our goal is to keep all staff employed during this difficult time with hopes that next season brings us rewards. The Board of Directors want to take a proactive position to mitigate these circumstances. Currently, Strathmore Seed makes 2 annual payments each of $101,000 and change. The request from the board is to defer 1 year's payments should they observe a cash flow issue for the 2021-2022 crop year. Thank you for understanding this unexpected economic situation. Please contact me directly should you have any questions or concerns. So at our last board meeting, we did discuss this request. The hope is that they would not need to utilize this. They're just trying to have a contingency plan in the event that there are cash flow challenges due to the drought. So I indicated I would bring it forward for council consideration. One thing that we could ask is just for administration to consider the request and bring forward further information around options for us to consider.
I understand their idea here, and I would prefer to wait until that situation comes forward, number one. Number two, there's a bunch of questions, if it did come forward, that I would ask about property that they own and things like that, what's going on. Because it is a for-profit business, correct? So this was a loan, and I realize it's a community that's for our ag producers. I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, it is a for-profit business, and they have decisions to make to decide whether or not this flow is going to be 1 year, 3 years, 4 years. So, you know.
Totally fair, and my only rationale for bringing it forward was just because of the service that it does
for sure
provide to the local agriculture community.
Not aware that the Strathmore Seed Co-op is a for-profit business. They operate, they want to pay their bills and whatnot, but I don't think they pay out any dividends or anything. I'm not aware of it anyway. Strathmore Seed Plant, since they got the loan, were very aggressive in the payback terms. They've always paid it up, and I believe they've always diligently had the money in a reserve account, and so it was always there. They've requested a thing. Everyone knows volume is not there. It's just not there this year. I don't have a problem granting the request, and I'm sure if they have the money, they will pay it up. It's just a 1 year deferral, and that's what they've asked for. I don't see the reason of waiting till they're broke to come back to us again for something. I'll be still in favor just as much as I am now. In fact, I'll make a motion that we grant the request as stated in their letter. We don't do a heck of a lot for agriculture in the county, and this is one of their requests. And the seed plant, Strathmore, covers a huge area of the county.
Well, through the chair, just a friendly amendment. If we're going to look at one seed plant, we have two other seed plants in the municipality that they've.
Ours got the same loan. I don't know what their payment reschedule is.
They could end up in the same situation.
Yeah.
So I think if we're going to do something like this, we look at all three of them at the same time rather than just one. And
I'm not aware of Rosebud having any type of loans, but I think they should all be treated the same. Just change my motion up.
If I may, I believe because we do have a borrowing or a lending bylaw with the seed cleaning plant, I think that we would need to amend that. So my preference would be if we could direct administration to bring back information regarding the process, just because I think we would need to follow the MGA and advertise to amend that, but maybe administration can speak to it.
Yes, the chair. So the process would be about a 6 week process. Off the top of my head, I think there's only two lending bylaws to Hazara and to Strathmore, the seed cleaning plants. So that is allowed under the MGA, of course. So kind of what would happen is that we'd have to do an amendment. There's a section under the MGA. I just can't remember the section off the top of my head, but we'd have to amend both bylaws. So when you amend a bylaw like that, you have to undertake the same process that you did to pass that bylaw. So what would happen is for both ones, since this is a lending one, we'd have to do first reading for an amendment, advertise the amendments, and then do second and third readings after 2 weeks of advertising. So all in all, it would take some administrative work. And if council does want us to put together a report on the pros and cons of that for your consideration, we can certainly do that for probably the next council meeting. Probably not a lot of work, but to get that report done. The other one would take a little bit of work, a little bit of money to advertise. Of course, if we defer those payments, we're more so acting as a financial institution of lending and also then revising loans of payments. So both of those, we really had two mirroring bylaws, one to borrow, then one to loan. So now we're borrowing to fund the co-ops, which is at council's discretion for sure. You're totally allowed to do that under the MGA, but it does take an amendment to both bylaws, and it would just be the lending ones, not the borrowing ones, and we can go from there if that's what council chooses to do. Thank you.
And I'll amend my motion that staff prepare a bylaw and bring it back to council.
A bylaw amendment, I think, right?
Yes, that's correct. Bylaw amendment.
Yeah.
And that would be for Strathmore seed cleaning plant. And do you think you'd be prudent? Should we reach out to Hazar and see if they would like it considered?
Or at the very least, approach Hazar and ask them.
Because we would have to amend the Strathmore bylaw and the Hazar bylaw.
Yeah.
I think the amendment would be because Strathmore seed cleaning plant has like a bylaw. Yeah, from 2012 when they got their law or their lien or their loan, sorry. And in reference to Scott's question, I believe the bylaw does have some securities.
I believe both bylaws would have liens against the property.
Yeah,
I'd have to just take a look. I don't have those bylaws. I haven't read them that closely recently.
There is a lien on the property, so there is that. And I could certainly bring information like around the state of the building and the value of the asset or something if that made council more comfortable as well, just so that we know that there's that security there for the funds. Councillor Armstrong, I think so. Then if we're considering Strathmore, we would have to make a specific amendment to that 2012 bylaw, and then Hazar's was more recent when they did their loan, so it would have to be two separate bylaw amendments.
Yeah, I'm not so much concerned about making the second. I'm just so that council understands that if it does come forward, that we treat them all the same.
So I don't know, Councillor Custer, if you want your motion to specifically reference Strathmore seed cleaning plant, and then we could reach out to Hazar and we could do a second motion, or if you want to include Hazar with a caveat that, like at their boards.
I agree. I'll just amend the motion that we treat all the seed plants the same, and when staff's preparing the amendment, they can reach out and see what's necessary and what's not necessary. But the avenue's there if it happens to be that way. The book of business between the seed plants and the county is vastly different for every plant. So maybe the requirements aren't there, but they should be asked.
Does administration need any further information regarding the motion?
No, we won't. We'll also prepare just some supplemental information for council so the impacts are clearly understood before we pass an amendment. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And also by going through the process, it would answer Councillor Clausen's concerns about more time and see if we need it. So this would chew up. We know how long time it's up.
And I guess my only response to waiting, the board did actually discuss that, but because they were aware that it could take time, any decision that comes before council can take time, they did want to be proactive and start it early before there are any issues. And we do hope that with careful fiscal management that this won't be required, but it's just difficult to anticipate what volumes will look like. And we have diversified the operations at the seed plant, and we're hoping that through some of that diversification we can kind of weather this more challenging time. But I think it's admirable of the board that they were being proactive and having a contingency plan versus laying off. And the CEO's experience at a previous plant when they did layoffs during a downturn might have been in 2002, was it significantly impacted operations when they tried to start up again, because then they were retraining staff, and we have found some really good efficiencies at the seed plant, and we don't want to lose that if we can keep sort of lean operations going. So, any other questions or discussion?
Excuse me, Reeves, it's Margaret. Could we have some clarity on the final wording of the motion?
Are you okay if I try?
That staff would prepare a bylaw amendment for
The bylaw
Wheatland County's
2012-107.
seed cleaning plants for adjustment in their loan. That's pretty short, I think. Would that cover it off?
It's a borderline bylaw, is it not?
Perhaps an amendment to the lending bylaw to defer payments for up to 1 year. Might be just some...
Just for a bit more clarity.
Just for a bit more clarity.
Yeah.
So the bylaw referenced is 2012-107 for Strathmore Seed Cleaning Plant. And then I wonder if we should just clarify for staff to reach out to Hazar Seed Cleaning Plant to determine whether they would like, and we could authorize a similar bylaw amendment should they request, and then we don't need to bring it back again.
I do feel like the direction from council is very clear, and the resolution. Yeah. Okay. We're good with that.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. On August 13th, I attended the Mayors and Reeves meeting for Central RMA District 2. And usually at that meeting, we discuss potential resolutions that may be brought forward to the district meeting. And the deadline is September, I meant to have it. It's very early in September. One of the resolutions that we had discussed here to bring forward was the MD of Greenview's former resolution around Seniors Foundation requisitions that had been presented at the Fall 2020 convention and was not supported. It was defeated by the RMA members at that convention. We did have some thorough discussion at the Mayors and Reeves meeting regarding that resolution. Some discussion as to why people thought that it may not have been supported. Some discussions around, is this an issue with other housing boards? We had a really good conversation around it, and there was a good general support from the Mayors and Reeves to support bringing it back, perhaps with a little bit more explanation and context around some of the background for it. And as well, there was a request from the Mayors and Reeves to amend the Greenview original resolution to change the operative clause. So the current operative clause reads, therefore be it resolved that the rural municipalities of Alberta request the Government of Alberta review the oversight of the Ministry of Seniors and Housing over housing management bodies to ensure that all HMBs are correctly and consistently requisitioning under the requirement of the Housing Act. Further provide training. Further request that the Government of Housing to amend the Housing Act to clearly state the ability of municipalities to approve or deny requests for capital projects. So there was general support for that, but what the majority of the Mayors and Reeves supported, and they thought that their councils would likely support, would be to put, therefore be it resolved prior to these, leave these in here, but add one requesting that the Government of Alberta amend the legislation to be consistent with how housing management bodies, many are currently requisitioning. So rather than trying to align HMBs with current legislation, seeing if there's an appetite from GOA to align the legislation with current practice of some HMBs. And so I indicated I would bring that back to council for consideration and to see if we would like to bring this forward to the district meeting. So it's a rather minor, not minor amendment, it is substantive. It makes sense to me that to bring that request forward to GOA. So I bring that for council consideration. We will need to act rather quickly. I'll grab the date for the resolution deadline.
What's the timeline? So who's going to work on this?
I don't mind doing it. So our deadline for Central District 2 resolution deadlines is September 15th.
What's the purpose of this?
Sorry, just 1 second. Yeah, September 15th for our district meeting, October 15th. I think purpose is just because of the conversations around our council, and then recognizing that I'm hearing it from other municipalities as well, that there are challenges around requisitioning not necessarily being aligned with the legislation, as municipalities paying those requisitions, as we're aware of it, wanting to make sure that those are aligned. The responsibility and liability of our councillors that sit on those boards. I think it would be best if I'd be more comfortable if our councillors, if the legislation is aligned with the practice around requisitioning, and just because there's some uncertainty around some of it.
Just the wording of the latest directive from the minister.
Yeah, just I think there's an act and a regulation.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just some clauses in there sort of around reserve funds, business plans.
I know.
Powers and duties, and the requisitions.
Is hard to understand. The county pays currently about 2/3, town pays 1/3. The population is almost reverse to that. But when you look at it and you study the operation of requisition, there's a business in Wheatland County, it pays a tax to the requisition, right? But if that business was to leave the county and go into Strathmore, it would pay the same amount, just virtually exactly the same amount. And that's why it's the preferred model. Or if it moved to Rocky Ford, it would pay the exact same dollars. It's not you would get 1/3 of the tax. You pay exactly the same. And everybody in the whole area is taxed, asked to give the requisition the same amount of dollar values. It works out like that. I've done it, I don't know, 100 times trying to figure out this requisition. Until you actually get somebody, and maybe we could have just so everyone understands how this requisition works and why it was developed like that. You take it out, the county's thing would drop by exactly what that person was paying, and that person would go over there and that would go up, and it's completely fair. But if we're not looking at the motive of it, I know there is wording in regulations, and I have phoned, I've asked staff, I've phoned Municipal Affairs, and they have no answer for me. It just is so, yeah, there is some wording in there that needs clearing up.
Yeah, and so just for clarity.
Simple as that.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything around how the requisition is determined. So the Alberta Housing Act, under Section 7(2), indicates municipalities are requisitioned on I won't read the whole thing, but a proportion of equalized assessment. I haven't heard any conversation necessarily around changing that. That's not part of the resolution. The resolution refers to Section 7(1), mainly subsection A, around that the amount of the management body's annual deficit, so that the requisition, the 7(1) says on or before April 30th, that lodge accommodations or a management body that provides lodge accommodation may requisition those municipalities for which the management body provides lodge accommodation for A, the amount of the management body's annual deficit for the previous fiscal year arising from the provision of lodge accommodation, and any amounts necessary to establish or continue a reserve fund. And then there's some, the reserves were also identified by several of the mayors and reeves as a challenge as well, just around exercising those in alignment. So the reserves are specific, more spelled out under the management body operation and administration regulation. And then the requisition is spelled out in the Alberta Housing Act. So the mayors and reeves thought it would be more palatable to the RMA membership to first request GOA along the membership with a way that was perhaps operationally easier for housing management bodies to requisition. Barring that, then there would be the request just to review, training, and clarify. So, and I can recirculate the current. The bulk of the work for the resolution has been completed by Greenview. They did have some background. They've got a preamble, they've got the operative clauses, and the background. So I don't know that we would need to add a lot. If we could, I would be happy. It wouldn't be bad if I had a little administrative support just to craft the wording for the first operative clause, and then we could bring it to our September 7th council meeting for council review prior to submitting it to the Central District. If there's a appetite from council for that.
As I sit on the housing board, I wouldn't mind more clarification on just, it is very convoluted. It would be nice to have direction from the government on how we do this. There's a lot of supposition, as you've said yourself, that this is the way it's been done. I'm not sure that's the way the government wants it done, and it'd be nice to have some clarification on that. Having said that, I'm still not sure why Greenview doesn't bring this forward and why we have to do it. Like, they've got most of the work done on it, and they understand where they're. I mean, it was very poorly supported at the last RMA when it was voted on. So I think it just sort of, that whole thing is there's just a real lack of clarity on how this process works. So I would love to see more clarity on it. It should be easier to do in black and white. Like, it should be, this is what the government wants, especially when there's penalty clauses in there to sitting board members, that, you know, like, we could be doing something that we think is 100% right and the government sees it's wrong, and there is a clause in there that I can be penalized for that. That makes me uncomfortable. So I would love to see more clarity.
Might be prudent to reach out to Greenview also and just see where they're at. Just out of respect for the work that they did on the resolution, let them know that we're considering bringing forward a resolution. Would they mind if I have spoken to one of the councillors, but I haven't formally approached Greenview regarding this. So the general consensus from mayors and reeves was just that it was the presentation that people didn't necessarily understand the challenge with it, and they did think that there would be a high level of support if it was just fleshed out a little bit more, and if that first operative clause was included versus how it was presented.
To me, a couple wording changes is all that's needed. The lodge, what we are requisitioned for, what you're allowed to requisition for, is strictly lodge. And you're only allowed to requisition for the deficit. Maybe the word deficit is misunderstood. When we set the budget at the lodge, we set a price for the rooms, right? We set, and that's all we set. We have a budget, how much the power is. We use last year's numbers and we make a budget, same as county does, same as everybody does. We need this much money to operate. We set a value price for the rooms. We set that price of the rooms. We know full well, not every resident, probably very few of them, can pay that price. So the government also has a contribution, the LAP grant. And you fill out line 150 of your income tax, you apply and you get a LAP grant, and it goes directly to the lodge, to the foundation. So you have the residents' contribution, their rent, you have the LAP grant, that's it. So the difference, the deficit, is the requisition. The requisition cannot be used for social housing. Not one penny can go to social housing. If the board decides to take the social housing buildings and paint them, government doesn't have to pay for that and probably won't. Can't take it from the lodge board to pay for that. So there's only one outfit left to pay for that, and that's the board members. You cannot make a payment to social housing that the government doesn't. So hence, we put out a budget that says how much we'd like to spend. That's it. And how much we're getting from the residents, and we fire that deficit budget off to the province, and then they decide how much they're going to spend. And they give us a budget of what we can spend it on. And that's all we can spend. And if we go over anything, we're liable. So before we go over anything and rob from Peter to pay Paul, we have to get permission. That's all staff does that. So that's the way it works in practice. But some of the wording in the document is unclear. I'll agree to that. We got to get it cleared up. That's fine. But the practice is, that's the way it works in the end. But we got to, if you're having trouble with the wording and getting it mixed up or unsure between lodge and social housing, it needs clearing up. And not every lodge requisition, every body has social housing. We have both here. So yeah, it takes some clearing up. And I can support modifications to the language. But the actual way it's done, the logic to it, I think is sound. Really.
The Alberta Housing Act, it is relatively clear. It says the amount of the management body's annual deficit for the previous fiscal year arising from the provision of lodge accommodation. But I think it's just finding a way to align that with the practice and ensuring that I feel a responsibility when we have members sitting on the board, and just as a municipality that's being requisitioned, to just ensure that we are aligned with the legislation, whether that's a change to the legislation that makes that possible, or a change to the operation. Councillor Baker.
So I have a question, and it's probably a silly question, but we're not requisitioning off their budget, though, are we? We are?
We always have a balanced budget, right? What the residents can pay and what you get for LAP they're not exact numbers. We don't requisition for a surplus.
Right.
So at the end of the year, we probably have a small surplus. Most years we do. And last few years, we budget to replace the shingles on the thing, and we got a grant to cover some of it. So that was a surplus, and we put it in reserves. But most of the reserves we have at the lodge come from prior years when the lodge had home care. And then the money extra generated from home care went into reserves, and it just stayed there. And it was those reserves that paid the $1 million mortgage on the renovations to the lodge. When they renovated it, there was $1 million mortgage taken out, and most of that was paid for through home care.
So if you requisition off a budget, what happens if you're budgeting as a full house, right? What happens if there's less patrons?
We're in trouble, and then we got to dip into our reserves and reassess for next year.
Can you give us
That's why you would carry a reserve too. Right?
Okay. And
with the pandemic, we are short. There was no move-ins.
Can I have a copy of that? What Greenview
Yep,
did?
absolutely. I'll circulate everything to council. I'd put a motion on the floor directing administration to, just trying to think of wording, amend the resolution, the previous resolution regarding seniors foundation requisitions based on feedback provided at the District 2 Mayors and Reeves meeting to bring back to council to our next council meeting for review. Is that enough?
Yep, it is for administration. If we do have questions, we'll definitely reach out to gather further information before bringing it back to council.
And I'll just add an amendment to that to also reach out to Greenview to see if there's a way to collaborate with the MD, given that they did the work on the original resolution. An amendment to my resolution. Sorry, Margaret. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Last year, Siksika Nation had received a grant to do some regional work on emergency management and fire planning. We had participated in the first part of basically like a scenario around a potential regional fire. Our fire chief and deputy fire chief attended. I think there might have been some other administration attended. And then Siksika had also requested that I attend as a council representative. They also had a representative from their council. And they had to postpone the second part of that exercise. It was a functional exercise. So the first one was a tabletop. The second one is a functional where they'll actually have sort of stations set up and they'll be trying to simulate a large fire. There was some discussion about whether or not council should be there. There was a strong request from Siksika Nation that we have a council representative just to help be proactive in clarifying the roles between governance kind of roles and administration if a situation like that were to arise. And so I'm requesting that council consider approving my attendance at the Siksika Nation functional exercise. It is scheduled for September 14th. The site to be determined, but they were hoping last time to hold it at Siksika Nation. Any questions?
Sorry, so this
I
is
guess my or a designate if
is this
deputy reef.
You said it's a desktop or is it a functional?
This one is functional, so my understanding is it would be in real life. They don't have the details yet. They sent a placeholder just because of how people's calendars are.
And is our departments, the fire guys, aware of this and the cost, and do we have the budget for that and all those questions that go with that?
Through the Reeve, yes.
Right. I don't know if someone wants to put a motion on the floor to that or if you want me to. I'd rather if somebody else would.
I'll make that motion.
The Reeve or designate attend Siksika Nation functional exercise.
Exactly.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We also had circulated an invitation from Rocky View County, extending an invitation to the grand opening ceremony at the Langdon Emergency Services Building, Saturday, September 18th. Looking for council direction if you would like me to attend, well, myself or a designate. Council's wishes.
Trying to find that email.
Excuse me, through the chair, are they in any way connected to ours, or is this a one-off, or are they tied in with our services?
Like through mutual aid? I don't know I don't know Rocky View.
So through the Reeve, in terms of a mutual aid agreement with fire services at Langdon, and let's just say the closest one would more than likely be Carsland, we don't have any agreements sharing those resources. It's mutually exclusive. However, I do know of some circumstances. It was our interim administration at the time who highlighted that there are, should there be something that is warranted, should we require or should they require additional forces in the event of an emergency? There has been some examples in the past. That was our previous interim administration that let me know that. I could certainly look into that if that's information that council would like.
So we're staff invited too? From Wheatland?
Sorry, for clarification to this event, to the grand opening, I have not received an invitation, but.
I'm just checking our ICF. We've approved it. It's just at the CMRB level for approval. I'm just looking really quickly if fire is addressed in there.
Personally, I don't have an issue with with it if the Reeve attends. To me, that's not it's kind of a good friend, good neighbor kind of a policy. So I'd put a motion on the floor to allow it.
Just a follow-up. Should we not have administration maybe explore, because from that fire hall in Langdon, they can probably get to my place faster than they can get from Wheatland West. So if that's from my place, everything west of me would be better served. So I'm just wondering how you go about maybe becoming more mutual. Yeah, but it's,
so I do see it's actually our IDP that we've approved. So I think we still have to draft our ICF.
Yes.
So that might be good to explore at an intermunicipal
It just
committee.
seems that it's such an opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful facility. They're going to have lots of equipment there. And I mean, if there's a fire if there was something that happened on Wheatland West Industrial Park, they by far would be there 5 minutes before anybody could get there from Strathmore. So I think it's just, I don't know how you go about doing that, but I'd like to direct staff to look into it.
So a couple things, if that's the direction of council, what we could ultimately do in terms of the best path forward, there's two options. Formalize a mutual aid agreement or open up our intermunicipal collaboration framework and under emergency services, kind of negotiate at the administration level and then open up the ICM committee to have that conversation. That takes some time, but we can certainly do that should that be the direction of council.
And I think it's important that staff.
Do we have a mutual aid agreement?
So I have to look into that because the previous administration had informed me that there have been some circumstances. Now the direction, should there be, we could find a historic agreement, and I can certainly bring that back and we can hash that out to modernize it. Or now that we have intermunicipal collaboration frameworks, it could be something that would be best suited to kind of expand within the collaboration framework between both municipalities. So those are options.
we have other surrounding municipalities we should have a mutual aid agreement with, and that I would think would be better suited if they were all the same. And we don't, I guess we have IDPs with them all.
Yeah, I believe we did
But,
integrate them into ICFs. I'm thinking
This
with the
is inside-
villages.
This is by the CMRB.
Not the entire boundary, though.
I know, but the entire boundary I'm concerned about is.
No,
So,
I know,
you
but
what
like
I'm
if we
saying?
do an ICF, I think the ICF is the best place. So perhaps, we have a motion on the floor, perhaps following that, we could have a motion directing just to review the current agreements. And I agree, it should be just to ensure that all of our mutual aid is integrated into ICFs with our neighboring municipalities.
That would be a good direction.
Something like that,
Yes.
just to ensure, because I think it's good to review that on an intermittent basis anyways. Our fire and our senior leadership, like under your departments, they may have already done it, but just to bring it to council so that we're up to date, that it's all done. It's definitely good to ensure that those are done in advance. There's a motion on the floor. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Sorry, who moved the motion to allow for the Reeve to attend?
Councillor Armstrong.
Yes.
And motion was carried. And second motion,
Direct staff to look at, to direct staff to look at improving relation, or looking at whether or not we can improve relations regarding the fire services with Rocky View.
perhaps to review current agreements with an ICFs or mutual aid agreements with neighboring municipalities.
Yeah, and whatever's.
Because I think it's Rocky View, but it would be prudent just to ensure that we have those agreements up to date with all the neighboring municipalities.
And I would like to explore going forward whether or not it's like what we have, and then suggestions to make that improvement.
Yeah.
They might not be interested, but
Absolutely.
For sure.
yeah. So that makes.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. I actually thought we already had a resolution for this, but we don't. If we could have a motion to ratify attendance, I believe we had Councillor Eichert and Deputy Reeve Clausen attended a golf tournament with Alberta Transportation.
I thought we had one.
I thought we did too, but Margaret reviewed and couldn't find a resolution. So if we could have a motion ratifying that attendance, travel, and green fees.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I thought it was for, staff was involved.
Yeah, staff did attend also. Okay, do you guys need a break or are you good to keep going? Is everyone good to keep going?
Well, I could use a break.
A break? Okay. 5 minutes, we'll reconvene at 10:52.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what you need. You need that kind of.
Mute off.
Yeah, those are the ones. So who did I just see? Somebody just bought a boat with
We'll call the meeting back to order.
so welcome. It's come out against
We'll move to 2.31, Council Resolution Tracker.
$9 billion shared gas operation.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. So on page 119 of your agenda package is the Council Resolution Tracker. So as usual, anything in green is things I have deemed complete. Anything in yellow I have not deemed as complete. Just to note, I did attempt to try to clean up the resolution tracker a little bit with kind of some items that I had deemed complete. However, I do encourage council to review them and make your best call if you would like them to stay on the resolution tracker, and if not, please let me know. Thank you.
Questions or discussion? I did just want to raise a concern with 3 of the resolutions that are highlighted in green as deemed complete. It would be 2020-1233 regarding servicing agreement with WRC 2021-0337 and 2021-0339. From a governance perspective, I would like to see those maintained on the resolution tracker because we don't have an amended Schedule E potable water servicing agreement or a water and wastewater service agreement. And then the first one was just around terms for that. So I'd put a motion on the floor that we accept the council resolution tracker with a request to amend it to keep those 3 council resolutions as yellow, denoting outstanding. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.32, sale of construction equipment.
Yes, Council. Brian from Administration. So in April, Council had passed a resolution asking for information on the sale of construction equipment that occurred in the spring of 2021. So it was a little bit delayed. We did have just some resource constraints throughout the county, just given some resignations in corporate services. So this report has come forward. Realistically, it has all information that we had presented to council previously. So probably after the report that I did create was on page 127. So that was in collaboration with the Public Works Department and our fleet coordinator. So there's some pretty interesting data in the spreadsheet itself. So council did request the date of purchase, the purchase price, the sale price, the total depreciation, and we did also include some other relevant costs in there as well. So we included labor, an annual cost for fuel that obviously would just be an estimate based on commodity prices, as we all know, kind of fluctuate up and down throughout the year. So it was actually a very interesting report. One thing that I thought I'd highlight or bring to council's attention is the average time that the equipment sat in the yard on an annual basis. So that would be the columns aren't labeled, but you could see right where it starts with like these trucks. So typically a lot of them did sit in, a lot of the valuable equipment did sit in the yard for about 5 months a year. And the overall cost that we did come up with on an annual savings was $1.6 million. So it's definitely some good resources that we can use and put towards other capital projects in the future. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions?
So, very first one, the truck, we actually sold it for more money than we paid for it?
Yes, so that is correct. So funny enough, there is some equipment that we actually do sell for more than we purchased it for. We do maintain it at a very high level, just with the mechanics that we do have and the resources that we do have. But yeah, sometimes we do sell equipment, sometimes even a lot more than we purchased it for, funny enough. There was I'd have to find the piece of equipment that we did sell a couple of years ago. I think we sold it for up to 4 times the amount that we purchased it for. And it just follows our kind of asset disposal policy that we do follow as well. So we take it to auction and we sell it. I think it was a rock picker. Funny enough, not big dollars. I think we bought it for 5 and sold it for 20, but it's a pretty interesting dynamic. And obviously the sale cost really does depend on market conditions and all that kind of stuff. Lots of who's at the auctions that we kind of provide these equipments to. So it's kind of it's very interesting, I find, anyways.
Good.
Another question I have, this CAT 815 soil compactor, we currently have one operating out there in the...
I'd have to get back to council on that one. We may, I just don't know if we had to. I can definitely find out if we have a soil compactor though on, like currently in fleet.
Yeah, check on it, see if we own it or not. Or...
We will do that.
Any other questions or discussion?
No.
A motion to accept the reporter's information.
Also move.
Councillor Baker has moved. Final discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.33, Highway 561 paving project.
Yes, Council. So on page 128 of your agenda package is an Alberta transportation project that is occurring on Highway 561. I did have some discussions with Councillor Armstrong on this one. So what I may do is I may pass this one to Councillor Armstrong if you'd like to take it from here. And if not, I can present what I do have.
Yeah, they told us 10 years ago when they moved out there that they were going to put shoulders on that highway. And for some reason, financial, I would imagine, they backed away from that and they just put a lift on it. So they lifted it up and they narrowed it by close to 6 inches. It's got no shoulders on it. And this time around, they came back and they were supposed to do the same thing. And we find out now that they did some milling towards the school, and then from the school east to the 56, they just put another lift on it. So every time they put a lift on it, it goes like this. Pretty soon the trucks, the big grain trucks and stuff they're going to be clicking mirrors on that bloody highway. There's a big group of them out there that are very disgusted with the way the government is using, maintaining that highway. And business is picking up out there now. There's talk about some of these windmills going on up there. There's other talk about some other development if it goes through the use of the highways. And it's just, I think we just need to let the government know that we're very disappointed in how they're treating that 561. It's a major road between the #1 highway and the 56 highway, and all they're doing is narrowing it up. They've done a little bit of work on some of the shoulders, but the promise of putting a decent shoulder on that highway has been, now they say this will make it last for another 10 years, so we'll be looking at 20, 25 years before we get any more work done on that highway, and I don't think that's acceptable. We were talking this morning about speed limits. Well, there's one that's a good candidate for a lower speed limit simply because the road's getting so narrow that it's a danger to drive on anymore with the heavy traffic on there. So I would just put a motion on the floor to send them a letter to the government that expressing our dissatisfaction with their, we're glad they're doing something with it, but dissatisfied with what they're doing and how they're doing it. I don't know how you word it, but let them know that we expect better out of there. If that makes any sense.
You want to put a motion on the floor? Oh, did you make a motion?
Motion's on the floor.
Okay, sorry.
It's after the fact because they promised they were going to do something and now they've done something else, and they've completed most of the work out there now there. So so we'll be stuck with it for another 10 years. But
Questions or discussion?
This has been a similar issue we had on Glenmore Trail. After it was a lift put on it, I think it narrowed down 8 inches or so. And the farmers were really upset, and their people's approaches are narrower and stuff. It's something you really have to consider when you're doing this kind of work. It definitely narrows the road down.
Any other questions or discussion?
oh yeah, but they take up the whole road.
Drops off usually so sharp you can't.
The shoulders are pretty sharp if you're pulling 40-foot of cultivator or on that highway. You don't want to drop them.
Some of the combines take up too.
Oh yeah, like it's ridiculous.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.34.
Yes, Council. So I'll be presenting this one on behalf of Tracy. She just had to step out for maybe about an hour or so. The returning officer, Tracy, is requesting that special ballots be provided in this upcoming municipal election. We do have to provide special ballots for Siksika Nation, as Council does know and they're aware that we are conducting the Senate and referendum election for Siksika Nation. We did agree to that with Municipal Affairs. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions?
Did I read that wrong, or are they paying us twice for part of that? A poll, they pay you so much, and if there is a poll, they'll pay you so much. I read it wrong.
They pay more if a municipal election isn't required. So normally in municipal elections where there would be an acclamation in a division, the county wouldn't be responsible for holding opening a voting station. Because of the provincial referendum questions and Senate vote, we'll need to hold voting or stand-up voting stations in each division in the county. And so there will be an additional cost to municipalities across Alberta, basically to host those votes for the province. And so they're compensating additionally for that, recognizing that there's a larger cost to the municipality.
Earlier, and not cost, not extra cost.
What do you mean a month earlier? Nothing to do with the federal. It's just because, so at the same time that people will vote for councillors in the municipality, they're going to vote on daylight savings time, equalization payments. No, just provincial.
Yeah.
So it's just because the province deemed it more efficient to just have voters go to the polls for the referendum and the municipal elections at the same time. And so they're compensating us for the additional expenses for.
I just read it wrong.
Yeah.
Brian, can you ask Tracy if, and I could probably find it somewhere, but the actual questions, how they're going to be worded on the ballot?
Yes, and I think I don't believe we have anything to do with those. It's just provided by the province. So we would never word any type of those questions.
No,
be
I know.
Uniform across the province, but I can try to find out the wording of the questions.
Yeah, if she's been notified of what the wording's going to look like on the ballot.
Perfect.
Please, thanks.
We will find that out.
Yeah, I think the province did.
couldn't find it, but.
Okay.
We can look for it, and if we do find it, we'll circulate it to all of council by
That's
email.
great. Thank you.
Any other questions? There is a recommended motion.
I'll move the recommended action.
Councillor Armstrong is moving the recommendation. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.35, annual contributions to not-for-profits.
Yes, Council. So there's just two annual contributions that we do on a regular basis to not-for-profits that assist Wheatland County residents. So these are two that we just brought forward, just being a contribution. We thought it would be prudent to have a council resolution behind both of them. One is for the handy bus for the amount of $10,000, and the other one is for the Strathmore Wheatland, or the WFCSS Christmas Hamper Society. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
I will recuse myself from the handy bus one. If they're both together, I would be both of them then.
Is it going to be a payment we're just going to do, or are we going to let them come and ask for it first?
So my thought was, so the reason this came up is that we were reviewing our budget to actuals, and we realized that our one line in the budget, it's the donations to organizations under the admin budget, was just lower. We took a look and we realized that our annual almost automatic payment to the two organizations had not been made as of yet. And my thought process was just to bring it to council, let council determine if we do want to continue with these payments. I believe the handy bus may be asking for more funding. They may come and present to Wheatland County Council in the future, but this is kind of just mirroring last year's budget and just kind of keeping up with what we had done in the past.
I would prefer that they come and ask for it every year, especially the Christmas hamper. Sometimes that changes, and we always have a. That's my feelings anyway.
When do we usually pay the handy bus or these payments?
I believe it varies from year to year. The handy bus, I feel like sometimes we had deferred it, not purposely, but I don't think there's any real timing behind it. Typically, what we like to do for these types of payments is we do like to pay them after June 30th. The reason for paying them after June 30th is that we receive all of our taxation revenue at the tax deadline, for the most part, with the exception of people in the TIP program.
I guess my idea is if we just pay it, then it becomes an automatic. And it's not. If you're asking for something, you should come ask for it every year.
I tend to agree with Councillor Kester that if they want the funding, they should be able to put something together to request it, put a valid reason together for why. I have no problem with that. Mind you, I won't be here next time. It should still come to council.
So we did have the Strathmore handy bus presented. I'm just trying to see if we have an
not that one.
outstanding resolution. I believe we had requested some information from the board.
Usually it ends up, if you just pay it, it becomes expected down the road. Not the first year, not the second year, but after that it becomes a right. Right is in the request.
Yeah. While we're waiting, is all this, like I noticed that we do in kind and for the rent of the office and everything, is that all being tracked?
Yes, so actually I believe it's the next RFD actually is CVIP. It's kind of the same thing, so that is an in-kind one for sure.
Yeah.
The handy bus office, it's the first year that we're doing it, so that one, we could also record that as an in-kind one as well. So it kind of would just be something, I actually admit, or I don't remember the exact amount that we had been previously contributing to the handy bus, but I do know that there was a council motion to lower it, I believe last year, down to 10. It could have been from 35 perhaps. So I believe the general thought would be that I'd have to take a look at what the calculations were for this office space, but my thought would be around $15,000 as an in-kind to the handy bus as well, excluding the monetary donation that we typically do provide annually. However, that is up to council's discretion, of course, to provide any type of funding to any organization in the county.
Yeah, I don't see an outstanding resolution. I do recall some conversation when the board represented. I think it was in closed session. Presentation, if I recall correctly.
I could, if council would like, I could reach out to the organizations, ask them to present to county council, or we could just leave it. I thought that I would just bring this to council's attention anyways, and if not, definitely don't have to pass the recommendation from administration.
So Councillor Kester prefers a presentation, Councillor Bigger, presentation, or just approved today?
No, I like a presentation too, about that.
The presentation isn't the big, it's just that they have to put something together and request it, even a letter requesting it. Then if council wants a presentation because of some oddities, then the council can ask for it. But no, I wouldn't say that it become mandatory that they do a presentation unless council sees something that they need some questions on, but at least make the request.
I agree with Councillor Armstrong.
Excellent. We may want to just do a calendar repeating thing to invite them yearly. Often around this time, the Strathmore and Wheatland County Christmas Hamper Society does present. We've often had them come in and just explain. I know there were some historical concerns that they did mitigate through some changes to their operations and their funding model and that type of thing. So it's always good to have those updates. Strathmore Handy Bus has certainly presented in the interim, so might even be good just to do that as we're doing budget discussions or that kind of thing too, so that we can have those done when we're approving budgets, if council's open to that. So perhaps just a motion directing administration to invite the Strathmore Handy Bus and the Strathmore and Wheatland County Christmas Hamper Society to present to council regarding requests for funding. Does that capture?
I don't
our
agree
discussion?
with that either. We're going to ask everybody to request for fund. I think just leave it alone. They're in the habit of coming here. I would prefer just let them continue. So we have this on the agenda. I would just accept it for information, then we don't have to act on it. My preference. They've been asking for funding for a lot of years.
We do have it approved in our budget, so my only concern with not communicating to the associations is if they did notice that it was approved in our budget, that they may not recognize that a further motion is required.
Contribution section.
But it's not.
Yeah, we don't have to pay it out.
No, we don't have to, but we did approve it in our budget. So my preference would be just to notify them that we would like a formal request to come to council. I don't want them to assume that because it's in the budget that it is being paid. And if we wanted to do it for, I believe these are the only contributions. I have to go look in the budget again.
I believe that we have some automatic typically automatic ones, these being two of them. That's why they were kind of brought to council for this reason, for the discussion and see what council's thoughts are behind it. There is more room in that budget for further. I don't recall the exact amount in that budget line. I could find that out pretty easily, but it's realistically up to council and what you guys choose to do.
A formal request, I don't really think we need to bring them to council, but a formal request from them would be, and then if we've got any questions, and as Ben said, would be my preference. But tying them to coming to council, I don't think it's necessary.
I think communication would be good.
Someone wants to put a motion on the floor, we can debate it.
Oh, I thought you just did.
I just said we could consider a motion. I don't think I made the motion.
I wish that glass wasn't there. I can't hear you decent.
It should be on the speakers. I'll try and speak into my microphone better.
I'll move that staff communicate to the Handy Bus and the Wheatland County Christmas Hamper Society to formally approach the council for funds for 2021.
There's a motion on the floor. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Just to note that Deputy Reeve Clausen has returned to the meeting. We'll move to 2.36, credit request for January to June 2021 CVIP.
Yes, Council. So on page 137 of your agenda package is CVIP inspection program. Very normal course of operation. It's a typical resolution we get passed twice a year. The amounts are in the resolution. If there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
I'll move the recommended action.
Councillor Kester has moved the recommendation. Any questions or discussion?
No question, just comment saying, glad to see that the prices are more accurate, reflecting what it is in the real world. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 2.37, 2021 library funding.
Yes, good morning, Council. So on page 140 of the agenda package is the 2021 library funding. So this is an outstanding resolution from 2013 that we still do follow to this day. We did budget for it in 2021. It's typically done at the same time as the CRISP funding, or the CURB funding is awarded, sorry. So we thought we'd bring this back to Council. Council had discussed this one previously. And we did send a letter out in 2020 saying that funding may change in 2021. So we thought we'd just bring this back to Council for consideration. Thank you.
I'll move that Council direct administration to forward contributions totaling $43,050 to the libraries located within Wheatland County.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.38, Draft Open Space, Recreation and Culture Master Plan.
Good morning, Council. Dave Ryan's Community Services Coordinator, and I'm presenting the Draft Open Space and Recreation and Culture Master Plan. It's included in the report. Since April of 2019, City Council and staff have been working on developing the Open Space Recreation and Culture Master Plan. Just allows leadership and staff to strategically guide and manage the direction of recreation facilities in open space until 2030. The county engaged dialogue partners to assist with the community engagement, and engagement opportunities were held March 10th, 2020 to April 5th, 2020, and then November 9th to November 29th, 2020 as well. And the council's strategic goals session was held on September 8th. All this feedback was gathered, and council reviewed what we heard report February 16th of 2020. And all that information went into the draft of this report, and it's reviewed by internal staff as noted in the report. So I can answer any questions.
Just further, Council, Matt from administration, I'd just like to add that this Open Space, Recreation and Culture Master Plan is a major strategic initiative within obviously the county. It was a goal to get it done, and I would suggest that about 80% of this master plan was written and the actions were done in-house as well. So we're very proud of that as administration. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
I'll move the recommended action that Council approve the Open Space, Recreation and Culture Master Plan. I know there was a lot of work put into it, and thanks staff for doing that. It seemed like a crazy process to start with, but it looks like it makes more sense now when I go through it. But thanks for doing it.
Councillor Armstrong has moved the recommendation. Councillor Kester?
Yeah, just so it's clear, this is a guide. So when a resident comes in and wants something a little bit different, it's open. Just so everyone knows that it's more of a guide, not a prescriptive policy.
Through the Reeve, that is correct. It is a master plan, higher overarching guiding document. For an example, if there is a development application that may be perhaps in an urban area of sorts that has a large amount of residents or something like that, through our development application process, we would maybe refer to this as if it meets an objective or something within the master plan for council's consideration. That's an example of how it'll be used. And obviously a referral document as well, similar to the guidelines that we drafted in-house as well, the landscaping guidelines, if you recall.
Thanks.
No problem.
One quick question, might be my ignorance. Page 157, where's the second spray park?
Drumheller.
Oh,
Strathmore
of course.
Drumheller.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that makes sense. My apologies. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion regarding the plan? I would echo the comments that have been made already. This is a phenomenal document. I think it's really good it does an excellent job of summarizing the facilities and services that are already being provided in the region, and it brings up really good considerations for both our existing infrastructure that will need to be maintained as well as future considerations. And just to echo the appreciation for the work that went into this. I appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to 2.39, Municipal Tax Incentives and Servicing Comprehensive Report.
Good morning, Council. I will first kind of introduce the report, and then I will pass it over to Jamie to kind of dive into the specifics of the comprehensive report. Council did request a comprehensive report earlier this year in Q1 with respect to two components. Return on investment for servicing, so I'll just briefly overview that. Staff solicited, obviously you could see in the report, numerous MDs across the province with respect to gathering any data with return on investment for those respective MDs who did undertake servicing, subterranean servicing on their own through the tax base or through various funds. So we wanted to kind of solicit if they tracked any return on investment from an economic development perspective. And secondly, the second part to the report is looking at municipal tax incentives. If there's any incentives that municipalities use to incentivize development. This is a major strategic initiative within the economic development strategy that Council approved early on in 2018. Also another major component in the investment attraction strategy that Council approved in Q2 or Q1, Q2 of this year. So those two major components are looked at within the comprehensive report. We obviously solicited numerous MDs with some information on some ROI. What we noticed across on average is that basically the common denominator is that there is no specific quantitative ROI that they measured. However, they were able to provide some substantive information on, yes, in fact, there are investments, there are developments that do occur as a result of upfront investment of servicing. So we have that information in the report. And secondly, the second component of the report with respect to municipal tax incentives. Recently in the MGA, there is a property tax incentive Amendment Act that was passed in June 2019 that allows municipalities to incentivize development. And I just want to give, obviously, to Corporate and Financial Services in assessment and economic development. They worked very closely to come up with a very nice model for Council's consideration in terms of moving forward. These, from my understanding, there are very few MDs in Alberta that do have incentive programs enacted right now, but there is the ability to obviously incorporate a model to incentivize development. And with that being said, I'll just turn it over to our Economic Development Officer, Jamie Cramble, to go into the particulars of the comprehensive report. Thank you.
Push the button on your microphone.
Hey, good morning, Council. Economic Development Officer Jamie Cramble, fairly new to the role. As Matt did a really good introduction to the comprehensive report. Just wanted to thank Dennis Clem, our Senior Assessor, he was, and also Bryce Mackin for their contribution to that. They were very critical or help in that. So I just want to get down to the right spot here. $191. Thank you. There we go.
Just going down.
Okay.
Down. There you
go.
So it was driven by the need to have a tool in our economic development or investment attraction toolkit. As Matt was saying, there aren't a lot of rural municipalities in Alberta or a lot of other municipalities in the greater Calgary region at the present time that have investment incentives based on taxes. Changes to the Municipal Government Act in 2019 led to changes that allow municipalities to offer municipal tax-based incentives for up to 15 years. There are quite a few municipalities in Alberta, Medicine Hat being one of them, Lethbridge, Wetaskiwin, that have jumped on board, and others are rapidly taking that up and implementing tax incentives. So. The report was driven by council, but also we've received quite a few inquiries from businesses on what our policies are, as well as had some very large potential investors come knocking at the county, and we're competing with other jurisdictions within Alberta as well as North America wide for those. So the impetus for this was driven to attract very large industrial investors, your Nutrien, Orca, so forth, like the large scale type of businesses that you would see in Goldfinch. So the actual report, I'll go through some of the key points in it. So changes to the MGA, of course, where it was driven by the MGA. We can incentivize for up to 15 years with renewals. The amount is up to us. It varies in the province from 25% all the way up to 75%. There's a process here to implement the tax incentives that's stated in the MGA. We have to draft a bylaw. We have to be clear in there of the eligibility criterion, the number of years it applies, and the percentage. It has to be fairly applied to all businesses that qualify. As Matt was saying, we consulted widely with our neighbors as well as others in the province. I reached out to Rocky View, Vulcan, Nehill, Sturgeon, Airdrie, Brooks Newell, Tabor, Lethbridge, and consulted with them on their plans to implement tax incentives or what they already had. Sturgeon County is one other county, Sturgeon Strathcona. They have incentives as part of the Alberta Industrial Heartland Association for those businesses within Heartland, which is quite generous. But it's a 50 million threshold for those. It's based on capital improvements. But getting down, Dennis drafted this chart. It just shows where our taxes as a county come from. So we're basically basing the incentives on 14.5% of our assessment, which is the non-residential assessment. The proposal for our county tax incentives would be based on accessible improvements. So buildings and structures. It would not include machinery and equipment or things like land cost. It would be based solely on accessible improvements. In the past, the county has done things like offer in-kind incentives, grading approaches, and so forth. So the idea of incentives might not be new, but tax-based incentives would be new. Consultation in preparing this report, I spoke with Agriculture and Forestry, Alberta Agriculture and Forestry, as well as Invest Alberta Corporation to get their idea on it. Both were very supportive. I also spoke with developers. I spoke with other EDOs from other counties as well. Just wanted to share a little bit about the scan and just a little bit about as well, just skip through this. There was a scan, John, of other jurisdictions, an environmental scan. It just kind of lists some of what's being offered in the province as well as in, states like Texas and Louisiana and Wisconsin that are referenced in the MGA. British Columbia, Saskatchewan have robust tax-based incentive policies. Other states in the U.S. that we're competing with, a lot of the large companies, as you know, are North America-wide or some are international. They have plants in, Wisconsin or Texas, and when they're looking at expansions, they're also comparing the offerings from those jurisdictions as well as other locations potentially within Alberta or Saskatchewan to kind of measure what the best package is for them. So we did a scan here. As I was saying, Strathcona County, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge were the key ones. Wetaskiwin also has a very generous tax policy, and then some of the other states. I put together a bit of a questionnaire. I'm not sure how this will jive with the actual incentive, but it's a questionnaire to kind of gauge, a little bit more information on the company when they come and they're inquiring on the incentives. It could be something that could go forth to council for information. Companies' experience in the sector, their global revenues, a little bit on the employment that they would create in the county. Obviously, one of the key drivers of this is not only to increase our assessment base, but it's also to create employment opportunities and hopefully well-paid employment opportunities within the county. So the idea here would be to sort of just, survey them on what their proposed plan is. Just wanted to show you the matrix that I designed, or Dennis actually helped quite a bit on this, and we came up with, I'm not sure if you can see it in front of you, but with a threshold of $10 million based on accessible improvements, there'd be a 35% reduction in the municipal non-residential tax for 3 years. When you get up to 50 million and above, it would be 45% for 3 years. The reason we based it on 3 years was council terms. Doesn't tie the hands of council. Others have offered it for 5 and longer. The percentage is sort of middle of the range. It ranges from 25% all the way up to 75% that I've seen within Alberta. So we are giving up some tax revenue, but at the same time, if we're attracting a very large industrial facility, giving up 3 years worth of non-residential tax, I think would be something that would be well worth considering. It kind of states some of the reductions there. It kind of covers the municipal tax incentive portions. If there's any questions on that section of the report, or.
Jimmy, does anyone ever put these incentives into where it would only apply to a certain location?
Yes, I've seen that as well. Like Alberta Heartland Association has that. There's also Business Improvement District type of policies. I based this one on industrial development, but there is other programs as well for revitalization of downtown sections, as well as Heartland, which is specific to that area within Sturgeon County.
So if we wanted to put our bigger industry into a certain industrial area, would be, the incentive would be there, but perhaps not in an area where it's
right.
Not.
Yeah, no, that definitely is something that is out there. And we can set the criteria as a county as long as it's clear and fairly applied. Yeah. Sure.
Any other questions regarding the tax piece?
I would personally myself, I'm going to leave this for the next councillor that comes in here. I'm glad we're taking this just as information, because I would never go to 15 years. I'd be damn lucky if I'd agree to go to 10 years. But yeah, there's a reason they come out here in the first place. The majority of it is because our taxes are lower. That's what brings them out here to start with. And then, I don't know, I understand the philosophy behind it, but I don't really agree with it myself.
So the current proposed model is just for a 3-year term?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's to start with. It'll change. Once you do it once you open the door, then it opens further. But anyways.
Some don't. Like some of the municipalities that are applying it, it is just for that expansion or attraction of new industry, and they know it's short term, and it's just to get that leg up in competing for industries. So, and just to clarify, when Jamie references lost industrial tax, there's no loss of current tax. It's sort of conjecture whether you would attract heavy industry, which we really only, from my review, have only seen one new sort of industrial development that would have qualified for this in the last, I didn't go that many years back, but certainly within our time in council. So this would just be that competitive edge for either current industry that is looking at significant expansion or new industry that is reviewing municipal options for where to put a very large-scale industrial development.
I don't. I understand all that, and I also understand that's why Calgary Metropolitan wants all control of all the land within 100 miles of their border because of those processes. So, anyways, that's just my thoughts. It's a good draft, good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a good report, and I do think that it should be kept like at the 3-year. But I also think it should be. We are an agricultural. Like we need our goals, where we want what we want to look like as a county. So I think it has to be location specific. Otherwise, you're going to have big industry everywhere and taking away farmland.
That's a really good point, and I think that if council were to direct administration to draft a bylaw regarding this, you certainly could apply it to only our existing industrial ESPs. The legislation does allow for that, and that could be something that could be considered to be integrated into that bylaw. I support that as well.
Well, it also helps with servicing if there's an area that we can get servicing to, or there's others that we can't. It's just going to cost us more money in the end.
Absolutely.
To put a motion on the floor to accept it as information and bring it back when our new council is sitting in 3 or 4 months.
I think, Jamie, were you going to review the servicing side as well?
I can review the servicing aspect.
Do you mind if we just do that first, Ben? I'll hold your motion.
Sure. I'll briefly go through the servicing aspect as well. We kind of took a look at the expansion of deep servicing to the West Highway 1 area, both, kind of a corridor down from Origin Business Park down to Goldfinch, and kind of look at the expansion of water and wastewater would be the main deep services that it lacks in that area. It's a bit of a limitation when we get inquiries that come in, especially from large industrial facilities, as they want to know what the current infrastructure is. When we get things from the province, for example, inquiries, it's a checklist that we fill out. Can you meet this minimum requirement for water? Do you have septic or wastewater, gas requirements and so forth? And if we can't meet those requirements, we lose out on opportunities. I spoke with the broker for Origin Business Park on that as well, and he believes that growth can be driven through expansion of services in that area. It would help to fill up that park. As Matt was saying, I reached out to various counties. Front-ending of servicing is not something that's a typical praxis. However, it has been done on many occasions by Rocky View. Strathcona County has done that. Strathcona, Sturgeon. And other counties have done it, like Vegreville as well. I believe Lethbridge as well has done it with their business park. So it isn't unheard of. However, typically most municipalities prefer if developers put the services in. Levies are typically used to pay for the services that are extended. What else can I tell you on that? Sorry. It's hard to prove the ROI for that. I've asked for that information. I've went forth to different counties where I have contacts, and I've asked. They typically don't measure it. It's not readily available. The only way we could kind of paint a picture is through equalized assessment reports for Rocky View. Rocky View serviced the East Balzac area. We could kind of draw a snapshot in time. So on 206, kind of what the increase in non-residential taxes was. For the Sturgeon Industrial Park, front-ending was done there. However, there still is vacancy in that industrial park, and the EDO investment attraction staff that I approached to ask suggested there were other factors that may have limited the uptake in those industrial lots, distance from Edmonton, some sort of a road realignment and so forth. So the ROI, as Matt was saying, is fairly difficult to prove. There's very little in the way of business cases out there, at least that I was able to get to paint any picture of front-ending services resulted in growth in industrial areas. Typically, levies are used in order to quantify the cost and pass it on to businesses. There's a Corvus model with a variety of factors that's listed in their report. If it's something that council wanted to do, we should engage the services. What the recommendation from the other counties was to engage the services of a firm that could then calculate a levy based on those various factors that would then be passed on to businesses to cover the cost of the deep servicing.
Any questions on the servicing side of the report? I think this is an exceptional report to integrate the potential tax incentivization in with some modeling for servicing. I think is it was done incredibly well. The breadth and depth of the research that you did to do this is exceptional. To have such a kind of good comparators both within Alberta but also Western Canada, and then even to go in to the States, I think is really good because we know that's where developers are surveying. And so for me, I think it's critical that we be competitive on that broad landscape and not just within Alberta. We hear it every time we're at the RMA convention. We hear it from our provincial leadership that we need to be competitive in terms of taxation as well as red tape reduction and efficiency of processes. I know our development and planning division has been working hard on sort of streamlining those processes wherever they can. And to me, this is just the natural kind of next step from all of the work that this council has done in terms of investment attraction, economic development. We've invested a lot of time, made investments in team members that are focused on this work. And so to me, it's, I guess I would, and I know we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Armstrong, I would counter that with, I think it is something that I would hope that this council might consider implementing this policy, just because I remember when I was first on council, and to grapple with a decision of this kind of scope and potential impact could be challenging in the early time. We could have, our entire council could be turned over, and to have brand new councillors who will take some time to get to know our economic development strategy and the context of the work that's gone into this. My hope would be that this current council would consider, in the summary on page 206, there is, part of the summary is recommendations to implement a sliding scale municipal tax incentive policy. So we could potentially consider some direction around that just on the large investor side, and then continuing to explore those servicing options. That's obviously just my personal preference. Yeah, and I think just incredible, and you highlighted it already, Jamie, the investment attraction, diversifying the tax base, and the job creation. And if we can create an environment that fosters those things in Wheatland County, and I really appreciate what Councillor Bigger brought in, the mitigating of ag fragmentation as well, by incentivizing it into our established ASPs, I think is a very solid strategy for Wheatland County.
But I'd like to just ask administration, or so do you need this in your toolbox, quote unquote, sooner than later?
To answer that truthfully, I think we do. We're competing Alberta-wide for some large projects, and cities like Lethbridge have already have implemented tax incentives.
Just to supplement Jamie's comments, typically in any economic development program, there is always expressions of interest that large manufacturers and the rest they put out. And so when we, as a county, we look and we do bid on numerous. And often they look at competitive advantage aspects and angles to present to their boards of directors or something like this, right? So we present a really strong toolkit from an economic development, public works side of things. The county invests in a lot of its own assets and the rest, so we're able to make that pitch to potential builders and investors. But often the missing piece, as Jamie highlighted, sometimes is that incentive program. It could be the last piece. And sometimes it's, more often than not, obviously, is servicing, what services does the county have in any particular area. That's part of a negotiation, though. So, and many large, with the threshold of $10 to $50+ million, a lot of these investors already are aware. They have developers and planners and all that on their end, so they're able to enter that negotiation with us on our side. But it's often the competitive advantage is some sort of incentive program that the municipality offers. So. We are obviously, every now and then there are expressions of interest that pop up. So we start talking to a lot of these large investors, right? And we're in conversations with many. So it is something that would definitely assist the economic development and the development of the county as a whole. I would say even last year, I would say, this is yes, sooner rather than later. And now to your question, definitely it would assist in us moving forward as an economic development program as we kind of mature, because we're still developing those, investment attraction pieces. But this is a huge component of it that would definitely assist.
Thank you.
I think I would like to see it sooner than later, too. That's going to be very competitive here very soon for these big companies. There's going to be fewer big companies, and I think whatever advantage we can give Jamie to get them, interested in looking here, it would. Plus, there's not a lot of other municipalities that are offering that, so that could be one of the key things why they come here. So I think we need to do it sooner than later. I was even thinking of taking it to a committee of the whole, and because we haven't had one for quite a while, and try this before the next council, actually.
Would be a Reeve Clausen.
Yeah, listening to here and everything, great report. And by the way, I've heard nothing but good about you from developers. They've been really supportive of your work. So I have no problem with this. With me, it'd be a 3-year timeline, because if you're most likely an existing business coming here in 3 years' time, you get your feet underneath you and get running and get production up and running. And know from being a business owner that those first couple of years are key to get the cash flow built up and your routine going. So that would give them that. So that's where I'm coming from. And then continue to look for opportunities to extend services. Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. We have to do that as well. But also not to build it unless someone's asking for it, right? So that's where I'm coming from. I'd like to do it this term as well, but I understand where Ben's coming from as well.
Just because we don't pass this doesn't mean we can't offer it. I mean, part of it's still there. It's MG approved. We can offer tax incentives when part of the negotiating when it comes to council. I'm like Ben. I'd as soon wait till the next council sees it. If you pass it now, next council looks at it. If they don't like it, it's only as good as the next meeting. Make them. They're the ones that have to live with it and accommodate it. I'm in no hurry. There are certain businesses that are attracted to certain areas. The one this morning we did the area structure plan on, they can't go much other places, right? So you wouldn't offer a tax incentive to them. To just say you can build here, there's an elevator is only going to go where there's grain or a railway track, right? Fertilizer processor is going to go wherever. I mean, they are restricted in a lot of cases, or they need employment. Everyone is different. And put a target an area. If we had footed the bill to put all the services in and that place is ready to go. Nobody's moving in. We got to do something here and get some people to move in, but we haven't spent any money on it yet. So I think that has to be drawn into a bigger picture. We got this, it's information. The new council's going to have to sit down and grapple with it. Are they going to increase this or that or do this or put us, whatever it is. So yeah, I fully support Ben's thing. It's just part of growing the county in a rational manner.
We do have a motion on the floor. Ben's motion was to accept as information and to defer information coming back until the next council. I won't be supporting the motion just because I think it is critical that we do this in a timely manner and that this, our term is not over and we are still responsible for governing Wheatland County. We are well poised with the context information that we have and the significant investment that we've made into economic development and investment attraction. My preference, just personally, would be that we accept this as information and direct administration to draft a potential bylaw for this council to consider at their earliest convenience. I don't know what kind of timeline you might, I recognize it's a significant bylaw, but if it would be possible to bring back in our next couple of council meetings for this current council to consider. I'm just sharing my rationale why I won't be supporting the current motion on the floor, but totally personal opinion.
Through the chair, I'm not going to rescind my motion. I'm going to leave it on there, but my question would be to staff and to council. You've only got 2 months, or a month and a bit. So if you try to rush this through, you're going to get what you want. You could end up having this on the table with the new council anyways. So it's just information. The motion isn't to refuse it, it's to accept it as information, and information is what it is. It's information for down the road. So no, I'm fine with it as information. I'd hate to see staff rush to put something before us just because you want it before the next election and it doesn't come out right. That would be worse than waiting the extra month or two to get it right and put it in place. So no, I'll leave it stand.
Any other questions?
My question would be about, like with a bylaw and whatnot, it's going to push its timeline anyways.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
we'll be into the new council regardless.
I think there is a potential because I know how much work has gone into this already. You can see the scope of the research that's been done. I know Jamie's focused on several different areas, but I guess a question to administration, would it be possible to draft a fulsome bylaw, say for one of our September council meetings? I would push so far as to say for our first one, because I know there will be, would we need a public hearing?
So, were you going to go for it? Okay.
Sorry. I'm just thinking through like notification, public hearing, if that's required.
Yes. So obviously we would need to have some readings, and we would need to, in order to draft a bylaw, what the report is saying is obviously the model is accessible, improvements. So in our envisioning here as administration, we're seeing something in the form of an accessible improvement bylaw to be drafted. The first meeting of September, obviously in 2 weeks, I would suggest in terms of just resources and timelines that, going through legal, crafting a bylaw of sorts and getting that sorted, and something that obviously through legalese works, it has teeth, it fits with the act, and then obviously something that fits with the character of the county. We have multiple departments that will need to see it and work on this. A month's time probably minimum would work.
Totally fair.
We have two meetings in September, so obviously administration, knowing this report was coming forward, knowing that it's a good model to use should council decide to look closer at it. We can certainly draft something in the form of a model of a bylaw and bring it back for council to look at. But we do need to go through the standard, obviously, reading process if a council, obviously we're getting to the point of the end of the term, obviously going through the readings in order to implement the bylaw at the end of the day. So the process will take longer than a month, but certainly we can get something together and get that vetted through legal and get a lot of eyes on it to ensure that it works with the county.
As for advertising and public hearings, I kind of, we'd have to look into it if there would be those requirements for advertising lengths and public hearings. My general thought process, which isn't always right, would be that there probably isn't any. The reason why I kind of say that is that under section 347 of the MGA, council can waive, reduce, or defer taxes as well. And that's just by resolution, and it's right in the Municipal Government Act. So that would be my general thought. But like I said, it's not always right. So we'll definitely look into it and let council know, regardless of the decision.
So my concern is we've got some time sensitives that I really don't want to bring out into the public. So I believe that if we have some, I would have some information to be shared, but I believe it should be done in camera because I think it is, I think in order for me to express my thinking on why we need to do this sooner than later, and I'd like to go in camera just to discuss, just be a brief discussion, but to bring the rest of council up to speed on what my thinking is, and I believe that it is just it would just be wise for me to do this in camera as opposed to I don't want it out in the public at this point.
So I agree with you completely. Clarification, Ben, on your motion, I heard accept as information. Was there a second part requesting this? No. So your motion.
If we accept it as information, then it moves forward. And there's nothing saying that somebody can't put a motion on the floor to ask staff to move forward with it. It's an information item. That's what you use when you're going forward. We accept it as information. And
I'd heard some wording after that, but that was maybe just discussion. So if the motion is just to accept for information, I would support that motion if there's a potential for a further motion after a closed session discussion. I'd fully support that. I don't want the motion to defer future discussions. I can't support that.
No, it's just for information.
Okay.
I got a question for staff. If we don't have this report, if we don't have it as a bylaw, and a company comes and they like a concession, we can grant them whatever concession council feels like, right? Usually I've never been in favor of making a policy or a bylaw before there's actually been a need for it. So if somebody comes and asks and we grant it and we discuss it and we see the pros and the cons and then we move to the policy, there's nothing lost. And similar, there's nothing gained by having a policy before you know what the need is. We're thinking there's a need out there, but I haven't seen anything yet. It doesn't stop us. And similarly, we accept it as information and the company comes, we have this information, it's can be opened up again, we can look at it. So I don't see the strategy of hurry and doing this because we've got 2 months left and can we fit it in? Let's give it the due process of with the new council. Maybe the council doesn't, we know there's going to be at least 2 new councillors here. They should be privy to have the opportunity to be able to sit and be in with the discussions of why we're doing this.
Councillor Bricker.
Possibility of more. I worry about doing it, what do you call it, just one up or one at a time. Is that when do you decide that is going to be accepted? If this company was deciding on 5 different municipalities and we don't have anything in our books, I mean, that could make their decision and not be us. And I can't see Jamie being able to, say, well, we could do this incentive where it has to go through council. It has to be. I mean, I think it's a time thing that would be a problem with going in that way with that procedure. Just my thoughts. Thanks.
Even if this passed a bylaw, I would not take any of these incentives as written in stone. I would have to do every discussion on every development. And like I said, some developments, that's the only place they could go. Why would you offer an incentive? And maybe another one, they can go about anywhere. Well, those are the ones you'll seriously look at. I wouldn't want to take, that's our policy. No, I couldn't agree to that.
Can I
Of course, please.
address? I think once the bylaw is implemented, it has to be applied to basically every company that meets the criteria. They have to, as long as they meet the criteria that's set out, it's basically has to be applied to each and every one. Part of the having a formal policy or bylaw as well is it's also a promotional tool, is that more and more jurisdictions, more and more municipalities within the province are already doing this. It's more and more every day kind of thing, and so we'll either be left behind or we can kind of have an initial competitive advantage. Like many of the factors, we have proximity, we have rail, we have relatively low tax rates for the region, a lot of other factors that sort of are in our favor, but this is sort of something that would put us at the forefront versus we play catch up with others in the future. So that would just be one other kind of consideration. We could promote that. We have this because companies do ask me as part of the site selection process. Like it's like one of the final steps after they've kind of come, they've met us, they've looked at the area, they did a bit of analysis, they checked out the sites and how far, and do they have the logistics. Then they come and say, "What can you do for us?" And then what do I say to them? It's like, well, we have because others will offer it, and they already have in many jurisdictions. So,
without going into particulars, how many are at that stage now? Can we wait a couple, 3 months?
We will, I think it's prudent to add this to our closed session discussion. I fully support what Jamie is saying. In a way, we'll never know the development that we lose because, like Jamie explained, the province, and I know Invest Alberta, do I have that right?
Invest Alberta Corp, IAC.
Invest Alberta, they keep kind of repositories of where there is serviced industrial land, and these developers and investors come to Invest Alberta or to GOA and they say, these are our requirements. Which municipalities meet them? We will miss out on potential investment and not even ever know that we're missing out on it because we don't have any serviced industrial land and we don't have incentivization at this point. You absolutely could do it as one-offs, but you're not going to get that opportunity with the investors that are looking at this broad scale review of where are potential sites and what is their what are the pros and cons to locating in certain places. I totally agree that there is certain development that will likely be attracted regardless of incentivization, like renewables were mentioned. Councillor Bigger's comment around incentivizing our ASPs makes a lot of sense because then that sort of separates out some of that development that may happen regardless and that could be broadly applied for throughout the county. I can't think of any industry that would specifically need to locate in Wheatland County. There's not a lot that sets Wheatland. We do have advantages that set us apart. Jamie's mentioned many of them, the access to rail, the proximity to international air, major transportation corridor. We have a lot going for us in our established ASPs. To me, I see this as that, like Jamie said, a tool in the toolbox to make us stand out. And I think the need's been established. Our council has seen the erosion of our assessment base as a municipality, both due to changes within certain sectors, commodity pricing that has impacted whether it's assessment or viability of certain companies. Those have had substantial and extremely challenging impacts on rural municipalities in Alberta. We have been, for the most part, saved from I look at some of our neighbors who have lost 25 to 40% of their tax base throughout the last several years due to some of those changes. I think the need is there, and it's been identified, the needs established, and then some of that erosion in assessment also comes from factors outside of our control around how assessment is being managed in certain sectors. And as well, we're experiencing the pressure on the other side of our financials when we look at increased requisitions and increased costs that are being downloaded to us from the province or shifted from the province to municipal responsibility. And those have impacts on our taxpayers. If we don't increase our assessment base, your only other option is to look at increasing your mill rate, which takes us further away from attracting some of this industry. And that impacts all of our ratepayers. And so if this were to be successful and we were to attract some significant investment, it benefits every ratepayer in this county by increasing our assessment base, diversifying that tax base so that sector-specific pressures or changes can be absorbed more easily because of the diversification. And then it contributes to sustainability of Wheatland County and rural Alberta. And so, and I do feel really, really strongly about this. I think it's one part of the package, and I would like to see more work done on the servicing side as well. I think we have some excellent work that's been done, some really innovative ideas presented within this. In terms of even, I liked seeing the different types of servicing in terms of water. Not everybody might require potable. So we look at sort of two streams and mitigate some of the cost by doing a lower level of processing for sort of some of the higher use. I just think now is a key time to look at this, and yeah, I've said enough. I do support the motion on the floor to accept it, and if there is an agreement by council to add it to the agenda for in closed session, we could do that as well. And then if there were motions arising, we could deal with those after closed session.
Yeah. And I don't have a problem leaving my motion on there as just accepted as information. If I'm a big company, these bigger companies, they don't act on a month's notice. They're paying attention to what's going on out there. If we put this through as an information item and they listen to what has been discussed, they'll know where we're moving. And like Glenn said, the first one that steps forward and tests it and asks us for a break, and council gives it to them, you're going to give it to everybody that comes in behind them. So you're setting yourself up for that to happen. So these guys aren't fools. They know what we're doing. They'll read this. They'll understand what's going on. And if 1 month makes that much difference to them, or 2 months, then I question their business policy. They're paying attention to what's going on out there. I'm not worried about it. And I don't want to be I don't want to look like we're so wanting them to come in that we're going to do whatever to get them here. That's not the idea either. If they come, they're going to be they better be productive, and they better be a good company to be. Yeah. So, anyways, I'll leave my motions.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. I am mindful of the time. If everyone's okay with it, perhaps we will break for lunch and reconvene at 1 o'clock.
You have been muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice.
There's a lot of help that went into it. I didn't write it on my own, so